All right, if y'all will, let's stand and say the pledge. We'll get the meeting started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it's nice to see a big crowd out here on a Thursday windy evening. All right. Somebody be kind enough to make a motion to approve our agenda. Thank you, Brian. I need a second. Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Council comments. Anybody got anything? Get us going? No. Hearing none. You got something? No. All right. Moving right along. Manager updates.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do have a few updates for yourselves and for the audience. So first, we're coming up on 5th grade citizenship awards, and so I just want to announce Mayor Gauntz will be attending Glen Marlowe on May 29th and Mills River Elementary on May 30th to present our 2025 5th grade citizenship award. So that's a very exciting time. We do have a blood drive coming up into town on May 30th. That is from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you're interested in participating in that, you're able to go onto the Red Cross website directly and schedule your time through them. Also, the next day on May 31st is Water Safety Day. And so, and I learned something about this as well, is that May is actually National Water Safety Month. And so Water Safety Day here in the park, it's a very exciting time. So we highly, we recommend you all come out. It'll be a fun time for yourselves and for the kids. The first 50 kids in attendance will receive a free snow cone. So that's another exciting little perk. Nothing like being near the water with a nice snow cone. A couple of exciting pieces here. Brickyard Road over Boylston Creek. We know that when the storm hit and it created damage on that, at the time we received word that it's going to take until about September for that to reopen. I'm excited to share that that is now reopened about 4 months ahead of schedule. So that's a very exciting that, and I want to just thank the crews out there for their hard work to make sure that that turned around so much faster as a major roadway within Mills River. The council, as council may remember and audience may remember, we've been working with our state legislative partners around some additional language around our Unified Development Ordinance, and to make sure that we will be able to continue moving through with our Unified Development Ordinances in light of the down zoning provisions that have been put in place. And so I have an update for that. So before that language was in what was called State Bill 69, the provisions to allow Mills River specifically to continue moving on. We've reached out to our partners up there. We talked with them about some concerns that we had about that language. And so I'm happy to announce that that language has actually been moved out of that bill. It's now in House Bill 183, and I'll forward this along to council. This is hot off the presses. House Bill 183, it's an omnibus bill, and the requested language changes has been adopted within that bill. So a little bit of positive movement and momentum around that work. Other than that, just as you may have seen coming into the park, we continue to work on the accessible park area out there. It's getting very close to being open right now. You can see that the slide is up. You can see some of the other little climbing elements and some of the other pieces out there. We're very excited to get that going. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, that'll be up and ready to go. But continue to look at our Facebook pages and our website. Once that's available, we'll make sure everybody's aware of it. So we're just as excited to open it as I know you all are. And then last and certainly not least, we're in budget season. So as we continue to move through the budgetary process, mark your calendars for June 12th. That is when our public hearing is scheduled. Next Wednesday, the announcement is scheduled to be in the newspaper, announcing that public hearing. And at that time, the budget book itself will be ready for public viewing as well. So they'll be available online and make sure, and it'll be available in the clerk's office as well. So a lot of exciting things going on in the town right now.
Thank you. Any questions about any of that? Hearing none. Public comment. I've got a couple signed up. We'll get them. Mr. Foster?
Okay, I'm Jim Foster, as most of you know, and I live in Mills River. I'm trying to make my comments brief because we are going to be talking about the 4-lane out here tonight, and some of my concerns may be answered, may not. As a lot of you know in this room, I was not in favor of the 4-lane from day one. But after a lot of discussion, a lot of meetings, NCDOT and other people, several meetings, my understanding was, let me back up just a little. My suggestion at the time would have been not a 4-lane for Mills River, because it's going to alter the landscape, and it has already, and all that. That if they would have done what they did to Howard Gap Road, that would serve that purpose. They widened the lanes and put in the bike path that everybody wanted. I traveled that road all the time. I traveled it before. It was a nightmare. It's nice now. But anyway, after much meetings, council at the time, and some of you was around, put a lot of time into an argument, if you will, into this. It was decided that in Mills River, what would best suit Mills River, and certainly me, and a lot of others, was that we had a 5-lane turn lane starting at Schoolhouse Road, and we had a map similar to that. I had a copy. I don't know where it's at. Somebody told me they still have them, but it showed that. That was what was the final thing. I heard no more about it till lately. So now we're back discussing it. It looks to me like we're back to the full length with at that time it was quoted to be a concrete medium. Now there's some talk now and said it might be a grass medium, which I guess would be the lesser of two evils. But anyway, that's where I'm at, and I know you're going to be discussing it more, so I don't want to take any more time. Patty will be cutting me off anyway. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Dan McCutcheon?
Yep. I'm gonna pile on with Jim a little bit here. Because I went through that process early on when this happened, and again, I was against it. But when it was finally settled and the council voted on it, that it was going to be a 5-lane highway, and I have the receipt. So now all of a sudden, this is changing. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't think it's right. I'm concerned about fire and rescue to get in these neighborhoods. I'm concerned about if you can't take a left. I live down here at Millsboro Village. You can't take a left out. Where are you going to turn around? What's going to happen? That's going to create more chaos, more accidents. You got people that can't take a left, will take a left, going to pull around down here. I just don't understand it. Are they also talking about the barrier in front of the park? I mean, are people going to be, they're not gonna be able to get in, or if they think it's okay to have that open, then it should be okay to have it open in front of the neighborhoods. Can't have it both ways. It's either all or nothing, in my opinion. And like I said, just that's my concern, but my biggest concern is the fire and rescue, and being able to get left out of there, and where people are going to turn around. I really like the council to really, really, really consider this, because I don't think when this thing went around the first time, there's a lot of thought went into it. It's pretty one-sided, and I'd really like the council to really, really consider this action. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else here for public comment? Hearing none, we'll move right along. Approval of our consent agenda by motion, please.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Brian, how about a second? All right, James. All right, any discussion on that consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the proclamation for our Hurricane Helene Volunteer Appreciation Day.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So On April 10th, that council meeting during the business meeting, you all directed us to set June 14th, 2025 as the date to celebrate Hurricane Helene volunteers that helped support us here at the Resource Hub. As we've said multiple times, but I don't believe that we can say it nearly enough. The hard work and the dedication of those volunteers are the reason why we were successful here, and I believe held up as a model for Hurricane Helene relief, and especially when it comes to helping with resource hubs within the county. And as the manager, I'll just say that it's one of the proudest things that I've been a part of in my career is to see how the community came together to support each other and to support those around us. And so it means a lot to be able to bring forward this proclamation for your consideration today to set June 14th as Hurricane Helene Volunteer Appreciation Day in the town of Mills River. And in doing so, we will be celebrating those volunteers that evening as during the movie in the park night with the Wild Robot movie, as well as going to be food and vendors there, et cetera. So we really want it to be a great turnout. There's a survey out there as well that I just ask anybody listening who has not seen it to go onto our website, to be able to go to our social media pages. We're pushing this out. We want to make sure that we can recognize those amazing volunteers who sacrifice their time, their recovery to come help others in their time of need. And if it's all right with council, I would like to read the proclamation.
Awesome.
So the proclamation states, a proclamation by the Town Council of the Town of Mills River expressing gratitude to community volunteers for their hard work and dedication in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Whereas Hurricane Helene caused significant damage and disruption to the town of Mills River, requiring extensive response and recovery efforts, and whereas in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, the Mills River Distribution Hub, pod, a resource hub that provided essential goods and amenities to community members, relied on the dedication and service of numerous volunteers to help meet the needs of the community. And whereas approximately 15,000 people benefited from the hard work of our staff, volunteers, and county personnel in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Helene at the Resource Hub. And whereas the Mills River Town Council recognizes and deeply appreciates the extraordinary efforts of community volunteers and wish to acknowledge their hard work and dedication in a meaningful manner. And whereas the Mills River Town Council desires to honor the efforts of the volunteers who worked with the town during the cleanup and recovery efforts in recognition of their service and commitment to the residents of the town of Mills River during the response and recovery from Hurricane Helene. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that June 14th, 2025 shall be known as Hurricane Helene Volunteer Appreciation Day in the town of Mills River, North Carolina. We, the Town Council of the town of Mills River, North Carolina, do hereby express our deepest gratitude and appreciation to all community members who dedicated their time, energy, and resources during and in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Your efforts have and will continue to make a profound impact in the lives of our community. The Town Council honors and celebrates these remarkable individuals whose teamwork and actions remind us that we can overcome any challenge together. In witness whereof, Mayor Gantz, Mayor of the town of Mills River, hereunto sets his hand and cause the official seal of the town of Mills River to be affixed on this day, the 22nd of May, 2025.
That's awesome. Well, I can't say enough for everyone. Our staff showed out tremendously. All the people just come out of the woodwork to come help. And when we didn't have no power, no food, no nothing, in some places, they knew they could come here and get something. With the generator on site, we could charge batteries for their phones. We could keep them up and running. They felt like they were still somewhat normal and could come back daily if needed. So that was a sight to see for sure. All right. Anyone else got anything about that? If not, we'll move right along. All right. Moving on to.
I need a motion. I need to make.
Oh, you need a motion? Yo, go ahead, make a motion, bro.
I make the motion to approve the proclamation as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Any more discussion about it? No. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. All right. Moving right along. State of the airport presentation by Mr. Lou himself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of Town Council. Appreciate your allowing me to be here today, give you an update of what's going on. And this is for last calendar year. For air service, we had 6 carriers serving the airport, American, Allegiant, Delta, JetBlue, Sun Country, and United. We served 27 nonstop destinations out of our area, with the newest one being announced last year, starting this month to Washington Dulles. Unfortunately, we did lose Baltimore Washington International at the end of the year, not because of us or because of Allegiant. It was Allegiant stopped serving Baltimore, so obviously we're not going there. From a passenger perspective, we had 2,174,125, which was down 3.2%. Majority of that is down because of Hurricane Helene. Seats in the market were 1,410,577, which is up 2.7% from the previous year. And our load factor, which is a number of what I say butts and seats, was 77.57%, and that was down 5.4% again because of Helene. From an operations standpoint, we had 2,099 aircraft operations from commercial aircraft. That was down 9.9%. General aviation and military, that was 2,348, and that was down 27.3%. That's in light of everything that we had during the rescue and supply missions, which significantly increased during the month of September, or at the end of September, beginning of October. From a construction standpoint, we finished the South Shuttle parking lot, rough cost of $10 million on that. Terminal continues. If you haven't seen yet, we are doing our opening between the middle of June and the middle of July. By the middle of July, we'll be opening and using the whole new half of the concourse, and we will start demoing the old terminal. Tower still under construction, and that continues, and hopefully to have that finished by early, we're looking at around July timeframe from construction standpoint. Then the FAA has to come in and outfit it. From a community perspective, we continue to have the runway 5K, generated just under $24,000. Those proceeds went to AB Tech Aviation Foundation, WNC Pilot Association Foundation, and our partnership with Big Brother, Big Sister of Western North Carolina. During Halloween, we did the first Asheville fire truck and treat. Courtesy of M&M Mars, they gave us a bunch of candy because of the hurricane. We brought our fire trucks out to the cell phone lot across the street and opened it up to the public. A great turnout. Excited to see all the kids and the costumes coming out for that. We continue with our pause for passenger service, which is our dogs in the terminal. AVL Gives, it's our own contribution for charitable giving. Our employees donated over $8,000 to various nonprofit organizations, including Big Brother, Big Sister, who is our partner. We continue to do our Asheville Airport blood drive. And we also had, of course, the Blue Ridge Honor Flight that went out, and continue to do the music in the airport. Economic impact from the airport. The state does a report every 2 years. Latest one came out in January 25. This is the latest copy of it. We have it online and be happy to provide you copies if you so wish. But our economic impact for the airport for Western North Carolina is $3.85 billion, and that's the B. So the airport does have a huge impact. Last year, we were just under $2.5 billion. Or 2 years ago, we were just on 2.5. So within 2 years, we've really made a big difference. Our financials at the end of the year, operating revenues were $28.8 million. Operational expenses were $14.8 million, basically leaving us net of $14 million, which reinvest in our capital project at the airport. And assets at the end of the year was $314,327,000, and that was an increase of $40 million over the prior year. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have my report. I did have, and you all have received a copy of our annual report. It's just the highlights of what transpired during the course of last year, including in this year's. There's an actual, because it's a paper, it has a crossword puzzle.
Any questions?
I do have a question, if you don't mind. I don't want to put you on the spot.
You're
but
fine, Mr. Moore.
as part of the Pilots Association of General Aviation, I'm just curious, what does general aviation look like at Asheville in the future? Just big picture.
It continues to grow. We are, as we develop the control tower site, we're getting ready to midsummer to put out requests for proposals for a second fixed base operator. For those who don't know, a fixed base operator is like the old full service gas stations where they'd wash your windows and check your oil. That's what a fixed base operator is for airplanes. We have one fixed base operator there, Signature Aviation. They've been there for a long time, but we are hopefully putting requests for proposals for additional ones on the west side of the airport. Obviously, second FBO would stem competition and hopefully help prices that we have on the airport. So general aviation continues to grow. You may have seen, we did demo 2 big hangars, actually 3 hangars on the general aviation on the south, close to our commercial ramp. We needed that for expansion of commercial service aircraft to be able to park aircraft overnight.
All right, sir. But with the new FBO, new parking,
That's
new ramp space,
all on the
places
we-
for
all on the
people
west side.
on the west
That's-
side,
That's what our.
which would be separated from the commercial side.
Yes, correct.
That's good.
Anything else?
Thank you.
In terms of size, how large is Asheville compared to other airports in North Carolina?
Asheville's the 3rd largest commercial service airport in North Carolina, following Charlotte and Raleigh. We'll never get to those sizes. But I think when I've been here a long time now. When we started, we were number 5 behind Greensboro and Wilmington. So we have jumped over the number of years. From a perspective, there's about 500 larger commercial service airports in the United States. We broke last year or year and a half, 2 years ago, the top 100. So we're sitting around 97, 95 right now. So that it puts in perspective, and that includes the Charlottes and the Miamis and the O'Hares. So Atlanta. So for us being 97, 95, somewhere in that, that was last year. Again, not knowing what our numbers going to look like with the downturn because of Helene, but being in top 100 is pretty significant for size of airports in this country.
For you and your employees, thanks for during Helene for shifting operations. I know they get lost a lot probably in all this as having to change their day-to-day.
We
jobs.
appreciate it, that and all the military that came in, local folks that came out and helped. It was a pretty interesting time, including our local controllers that were guiding our normal number of airplanes a day is around 100 commercial and general aviation. And during those 2 to 3 weeks after Helene, we were handling 300 airplanes a day.
Wow.
So it was a huge jump, and the FAA controllers were, a big part of that. So thank you.
All right. Anything else? Not? We appreciate you as always.
Thank you. If you have any other questions, please feel free to give me a call.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. When staff is ready, we will move on with our discussion on the Haywood Road, 191.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So at our last meeting in May, during the May 8th meeting, you directed staff to request public safety experts to come in from various perspectives, to come and share their perspective on the conversation that we had at that point under other business around 191 and the widening project that's now projected to be starting out in 2029. And as a reminder for those in the room, the current plan is for a 5-lane highway on 191. From my understanding and from the understanding of the conversation, again, Council, this is your perspective to opine further on if you so wish, is that because of that push of the project back a couple of years, partly because of funding when it comes to Hurricane Helene recovery, the question became, is there an opportunity to have further conversation about what that future expansion looks like from a 5-lane compared to a 4-lane divided highway? And so before you today, we were able to bring together subject matter experts from across various fields. And I'm going to ask them to come up and sit at the table before you hear and introduce themselves. If you all don't mind to step up there for me. We have members from Mills River Fire and Rescue, our Henderson County Sheriff's Office, the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, and North Carolina Department of Transportation here to try to answer the questions that you have about this project or about elements of that. Now, the one other thing I'll mention is that after the conversation, there is a resolution that is drafted for your consideration afterwards, which would essentially request a conversation to begin, a formal request to the DOT to start that conversation back up again about the best approach for handling 191 widening. And so again, I'm happy to try to answer any of those questions. It mirrors closely what our MPO presented before, but again, it's tailored towards you all about the openness and willingness to have that conversation restart if you so choose.
So just so you could clear the air, could you tell us how this got brought back up? There's a lot of, I think, misconceptions in the community and so forth, and I just want to clear all that up if we can. I see Tristan's back there with us tonight as well. But I know one thing is it being moved out to 2029, give the option for a relook. And if that's as simple as it was, then that's understandable. But I just want to make sure that we understand how this got brought to our attention again to go to look at it.
Absolutely. And if I
It's
may,
an option to look at it.
yeah, exactly right. It's the option to look at it. And again, just to reiterate, the resolution does not state that council would prefer one method over the other. The current status quo is the plan of a 5-lane undivided expansion project. The resolution only states that you all are willing to come to the table to have further discussion if there are proposals, reasons, safety concerns, et cetera, that may necessitate further conversation. When it comes to the actual beginning of the conversation, and I'm going to, Councilmember Moore, if it's all right, I may defer to you
Absolutely.
from your perspective on this, and I'm happy to provide then our perspective as staff as to how this continued.
Sure.
Tristan, would you like to come up here in case we have any questions for you as well? Make sure you can.
So how this started, and for those that aren't familiar with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, Tristan, of course, is the expert on that. But for my time at DOT in the city of Asheville, and now as the representative for the town of Mills River on the board, the MPO is an advisory board to the NCDOT in projects. That's one of the functions they have. Another function they have is, and we discuss problem areas, and we discuss how to make our roads safer. And in North Carolina, unfortunately, the number of crashes is not decreasing at a rate that anyone's happy with. No one wants to see more crashes. And as part of that, the MPO looks around, looks for areas, and Tristan, stop me if I'm misspeaking, to see where possible improvements could be made. And you look at an area, you look at a type facility, and then look at proven countermeasures. And generally 5-lane highways, and I say generally, not specifically. Generally with a 5-lane highway, if there's a crash problem, one of the treatments is to put in a median and sort of control the access on that road, control the conflicts on that road. A full intersection with 4 ways of access has multiple points of potential conflict. When you take the left turns out, especially left turns out of a driveway, then you reduce a conflict point. And so there are numerous studies. I go through training every year with the NCDOT for access management, and there are numerous studies that show the 4-lane with a median, 4-lane divided highway is safer than a 5-lane. Now, I don't want to get into a safety discussion because what is safe? Certainly not bathtubs, because people die in their bathtubs. But the thing is safer, making it safer. And by eliminating some of the conflict points, it's generally seen by the engineering community, which I'm part of. By eliminating those conflict points, you make the road safer in general. Now, what the conversation that we've had is it something worth looking into again? Is there enough, I won't say proof, but enough evidence that one way is safer than the other for all users. Because we know we have numerous users on that section of road. We have tractors, we have farmers, we have students, we have buses, we have people trying to walk. So the question is it worth looking at it again? So I'm the one that brought it to council, and that's what got the ball started. Roll.
If I may, thank you, Councilman, for it, but further clarification, and if I may, there was a conversation, at the beginning between the MPO and yourself.
Correct.
Members of the MPO and your staff and yourself around this, with that conversation, and then from that conversation, that's when, MPO started going down the route, looking through potential resolution and bringing forward that to the full MPO. And then at the same time, at the May 8th meeting, I believe it was actually on the same date, correct me if I'm wrong with this as well, but I believe it's also that meeting happened on May 8th, where, that conversation happened, and then the conversation happened here, where you brought it forward to council for discussion under other business. And so, then, again, from our staff perspective, once we became aware of the conversations between yourself and with the MPO and the direction the MPO happened, then we have obviously been working from on council's behalf to continue trying to gather information, bring information forward to you all for that discussion.
Sure. And the question is there anything new? Is there more information that we have today than the previous council who supported the 5-lane had? Is this, is it truly a matter of safety? Is it, what is best for Mills River? And I think everyone should have a seat at the table to discuss it. And then if a decision is made to support the conversation, moving forward, or eventually to support the change in the road, then we need to have all the facts possible. So that's what started the conversation.
All right, so let's start out with some questions. Anybody got anything they want to ask right out of the gate? If not, I got a few jotted down here. Sound like it's me. Tristan, how many other sections in the MPO's territory are you looking at?
So if I may, Mayor, I apologize. If we couldn't
Okay,
just
introduce it,
introduce
okay.
real quick, I'm so sorry.
Jason Livingston, Assistant Chief of Fire Rescue.
Darren Whitaker, District Captain for the Sheriff's Office.
Sergeant Corey Epp, Sergeant with the North Carolina State Highway Patrol. Tristan Winkler from Broad River Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Troy Wilson, DOT District Engineer.
Rusty Darnell, into DOT Assistant.
And if I may, we only have one mic. So either I would just ask you to speak up or just try to move it back and forth a little bit as we have conversations. I think that would just be,
There you go.
there we go. Thank you.
So how many specific segments are we looking at for adding a median throughout the region?
Yeah,
I don't know that number offhand, but I will say numerous.
okay.
There's a number of things that we look at when we consider potential projects. One of those things is crash histories. And a lot of the roads in our region that tend to stick out with significant crash histories, both in terms of total crashes as well as the severity of those crashes. A lot of those are 5-lane roads. In Buncombe County, we submitted Hendersonville Road, New Leicester Highway, Sweeten Creek Road, Smoky Park Highway, Tunnel Road. All of those are 5-lane cross sections that we submitted to become a 4-lane divided. In Henderson County, one of those requests was with Spartanburg Highway. But in general, we look at those treatments. They're considered proven safety countermeasures by the Federal Highway Administration and their research. And so when we see areas of significant crashes and they're 5 lanes, in general, the recommended countermeasure tends to be adding medians.
Okay. Is any of those that you mentioned already designed and ready to build if the money was there? Maybe a couple of them.
I mean, the projects that we've had over the last few years, we have, as you know, Mayor, the we've lost a lot of projects due to the financial situation at NCDOT.
Yeah.
So as of right now, I don't believe we have any of those corridor retrofits
Okay,
that are funded, but there have been projects in the region that have been done in the past that have added medians.
okay. Go ahead.
I would ask, could someone explain why there's a concern about a 5-lane versus a 4-lane? What is the main concern from a safety standpoint? What maneuver is the worst? Is it a left turn in, left turn out?
I think one of the biggest concerns from a safety standpoint, when you're talking about a 5-lane and a 4-lane, is that median itself, to be honest with you. You get a lot of people, say you got one car that wants to turn left and the other car wants to turn left, and they end up coming up at the same time. And then you get that, well, you go, no, I go, you go, I go, or, and then they also having that median lane can hinder your sight vision of what's behind, what's coming, because that might be a car right there at you as well. You also that the left turn coming out of the driveway is probably one of the more prevalent, what we call a crash code when we work a crash on a 5-lane highway. It's a left turn coming out because you're crossing 3 or 4 lanes of traffic just to get over into the other lane to go left. One of the fallbacks on that is the conveniency of the 5-lane. Obviously, if you got a 5-lane, it's open. If you take a turn, make a left turn, a right turn, anywhere you want to make it. But there is a fallback on that safety, because in looking at our crash data and looking at other cities, for example, I'm originally from Jackson County. I worked in Silva, North Carolina, and I'm not sure if the board's aware, if this community is aware, but like Silva, for example, they have a 5-lane right now in their town, and they are going to a divided median. They're changing it to get rid of what we call a suicide lane, that middle lane.
That's what we call it.
And basically they'll have certain sections where you can make that U-turn to come back. And what that does is that controls that traffic where they have to make those certain sections. One of the fallbacks, I guess, on taking out the suicide lane as well is that people you more prevalent rear end wrecks per se, because when you got traffic flowing, there's only so many, depending on how long that turning lane is to make that U-turn. Traffic can be going at 35, 40 miles an hour. If people aren't keeping a safe following distance, which, to be honest with you, most people do not, it puts that pressure on that car to come to a stop to try to get into that lane to make that. Where if you have a 5-lane divider, there's more room. You can get into that 5-lane, that median lane at any point in time. So there's no question when it comes to in the crash data. I don't have it on my hand. I apologize, but there's no question that there's more wrecks when it comes to a 5-lane highway than when it comes to a 4-lane highway with a median divider controlling when you can make that U-turn to come back. But as a community standpoint, I see the issue of the convenience. So because if you're coming out and you used to making that left turn to get on the 191, now you got to make a right turn to go down. But it's got to be a question for the community, for the board, as far as what's more important for convenience or for safety per se when it comes to driving on that particular highway.
Sure, thank you for that. And sometimes of the day, it's no problem. Sometimes you wait forever
Right.
because you have to have sufficient gaps in both directions.
Correct. You have sufficient gaps, and sometimes it's even easier. To be honest with, just a little bit of a personal preference here. I live off of US 74 in Jackson County, and it's a divided highway with a raised concrete median. But coming out of my development, you can make a left turn to go eastbound per se on US 74. There are times where I have to make a right turn because I can't cross all lanes of traffic to get over there safely. So I make a right turn to go down and turn around and come back on to go back, eastbound on US 74.
Yes, sir.
Is that inconvenient for me? Yes, but at the same time, it's a lot safer turning into one lane of traffic than it is trying to cross 3 or 4 lanes of traffic. So,
Excellent. Thank you.
As far as this is still an agricultural community,
okay,
I am one of the guys who drives tractors and prefer not to lose my life trying to get to a field. If I come out right here, this road's called Cooper Lane.
Mhm.
And there wouldn't be a way to take a left
correct.
anymore. So I would need to take my tractor at 25 miles per hour, take a right, get in essentially the fast lane to go up, to merge,
To
to
merge,
make a
come back.
U-turn, cross the fast lane again,
Correct.
to go back down a schoolhouse to get to my field. And I'm one of many that we
Correct.
still are heavy agriculture. I know we're growing, but
Correct.
there's a lot. I thought of it the other day. I probably one time a day in a tractor go
Right.
that way. And if I'm not mistaken, is it not, technically speaking, I would need to get into the slow lane and then merge into
Yeah.
the fast
Correct.
lane in a tractor doing 25.
Correct. Absolutely.
So that's, for me, is trumps a lot of the safety things. In my opinion, we could make a 5 lane a lot safer by making it 35, 40 miles per hour and enforcing it.
Right.
280 out here is 45.
Right.
Many a times you could write me a ticket for doing well more than that.
Right.
Well, if we slowed it all down, it would be safer.
Correct.
I understand there are times of the day where 5 o'clock, it's hard to turn out here now,
Right.
but with a full-time turning lane, you could also merge out to the turning lane and then merge over.
Absolutely. And I'm certainly not trying to persuade one way or the
I'm
other.
I'm just
I'm
asking.
just telling you
I'm
from a
not-
bird's perspective, and as far as like that situation, and I understand this is, and I've run very quickly, this is a very big agriculture town. I know something to be proud of, and I'm just speaking from an overall standpoint, every vehicle that there is, and yes, in your situation, I don't have any data to prove it, but I would venture to say that a 5 lane would be much safer for a tractor to get, because you have that, you can just cross right over instead of merging on and then trying to make a U-turn and go back down, then come back down again to wherever you need to be. By all means, that would be a quicker, but I think we have to, not me, the board and the town has to look at the overall picture of, okay, is that enough to, change that one way from a 5 lane to a 4 lane and whatnot? I am certainly not persuading. I'm just telling the board from our perspective, the crashes that we work a lot more crashes on a 5 lane highway than we do a 4 lane highway with the median divider.
It is that, like, I'm not questioning that. I'm saying, is that because 5 lanes have more traffic on it?
Not all of them. It's because there's not so much control. There's not barriers controlling the traffic per se. So you might have somebody, again, it comes back to making that full left turn coming out. We work what we call a left turn different roadway quite a bit on a 5 lane highway because they're coming off of a parking lot or a private property, making a left turn, and even right turns as well. So, I mean, it can happen either way, but it's not always because there's more traffic. It's because per se, it might have been safer for them to go down right, but because there's a 5 lane there, they can make that full turn and go left. Per se.
Okay, but we could request and get like the data that would the different.
Good work.
Sorry. Like between a true accident that happened because of a left-hand turn versus texting and driving.
Correct. Next, and there's big
Okay.
data on that, statistical data on that as far
Okay.
as the wrecks per se.
Okay, that would.
That's something the MPO is working to get those crashes for us. And that would also be part of the conversation.
Yes.
And that brings up a question. A lot of people say that they get into that center turn lane and accelerate and merge into traffic. I've been told in the traffic engineering world that that's not a legal movement, that center turn lane is not an
It's
acceleration
not an
lane.
acceleration lane. It is a lane to get into, stop, and then merge on over into it as well.
But you still could then only cross 2 lanes to get
Mhm.
to where you're going safely and then re-merge again.
Correct, you're correct.
So-
Absolutely, yeah. It really,
It's
see
just
what
not
you're
an
saying.
on-ramp.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Not an on-ramp per se. But what you see it quite a bit though, people turn into that turn lane and then they accelerate and then the car beside them's, they're accelerating or decelerating, come on,
Mhm.
technically that center lane by law is you pull into it and you actually just kind of hang out there until it's clear for you to come on over and then
Okay.
merge on into that.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for
Maybe this
clearing that
isn't a
up.
question for you, but just a general, would slowing down the speed limit, let's say 35, would that, and leave it a 5 lane, would that give more of like a town feeling, like, you're going slow through here, it's back and forth versus a divided highway, which would be presumably a higher speed limit?
Well,
That
that would be a question for the DOT as far as the speed limit goes, and I'm not sure who acts or.
What,
What I would say for that, sir, would be, look at US 25 business, 191, back to Stony Mountain Road. Speed limit is 35 through there, they consist of 60. It's a large accident district, city person. I personally live, I would have no complaints with 25 business being a divided 4 lane from 191 all the way to the county line. The traffic pattern that is being discussed with 4 lane divided is the traffic pattern that is in place on the road. Granted, the agriculture on the south end is more orchard related, where it's more cultivation up here, but there are a large number of tractors that utilize the divided section of Upward Road. That project was completed 13, 14 years ago. And since the 6 months after it was completed, I don't know of a single complaint that we've got about the traffic pattern. Once people got used to it, it's like the diverging diamond at the airport. Once people get used to it, it's like it's always been that. You were talking about accidents, if I may. I pulled this off of our serious injury and fatality accident map. It gives you some local roads. I just looked at the 5 lane section of NC 280 from Old Haywood Road to the county line. The 2 lane section of 191 from 280 to North Rugby. And the 4 lane divided on Upward Road from 176 to the end of the divided section. These are just the serious injuries and the fatalities that are listed on DOT's webpage.
And a class A is generally a hospital.
Hospital, serious injury requiring hospital care. These go back to 2014 was the oldest one I could locate. And this is every accident that we've got on that map for those sections of the road since 2014. Now, I couldn't find a date where it ended. I don't know if that was just through 2024 or if it was the first quarter of 25. I can't say on that. But that was what I pulled off the map yesterday. And the more I looked at it, it honestly surprised me at the difference between Upward and 280, considering it's basically the same traffic volumes.
And just for everybody in the audience, if you guys can't see this, this is all the crashes on the 4 lane in Mills River. This is the divided highway on the road, just this.
And to be honest with you, living on 280, I know of 3 or 4 more than that on this list. I can't speak for Upland, but I know more.
Well, and these are just the ones where people went to the hospital
Or that.
or died. This is not just property damage only, which would probably be several pages.
In the current design, I'm sure this, since we're widening all of 191. Is all of 191 into Stony Mountain going to be a 5-lane, or is there a certain point where it's divided?
The current plan has a divided 4-lane from Stony Mountain Road to Schoolhouse. And
Just from Schoolhouse,
at the town limits, it switches to a 5-lane all the way to 280,
so we're talking about 1.4 miles.
roughly, yes.
Okay.
Then past Stony, what'd you say?
It's,
It goes back. What does it go from there into town?
It stays the 2-lane that it is now.
yeah.
I
not
think the
designed.
intention was to originally 4-lane Stony Mountain, right?
Well, the original intention was to do something from 191 from Stony Mountain back to US 25. That was our 2588A. But that one has since not moved forward.
But in the long-term goal,
In the
that is
long term,
probably
yes.
yes, more like yes.
So,
think-
go ahead, Brian, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I think, anybody driving Hendersonville today? Anybody notice anything with traffic? So Polk County's got it shut down to 1 lane. But they're doing work on the bridge, I believe. So the traffic backed up on the interstate. Way past Fletcher exit. So what did everybody do? They get off the interstate and cut through. So the thing I'm trying to remember is that we're not designing this road for next year, not designing it for 5 years from now. You guys aren't even gonna start the project for 5 years from now. So we're talking 2030, restart. I'll be graceful, say it'll probably take DOT 5 years.
Rest, he doesn't care,
Yeah.
except the door.
Write
So,
that down.
so we're talking, so we're talking 2035 before the road's even, we'll say, completely done. Fair? Okay. So we know that we already have enough permits pulled in Mills River housing to increase our population by 10%. We have 1,500 homes going over on Taproot. We have a Publix that's being built, and I can promise you that everybody who lives on 191 Blythe Street is not going to cross downtown Hendersonville. They're going 191 down to this Publix. So our traffic is going to increase significantly. Right? So we have to think about how we're going to design a road for the next, well, another thing that's changed is now the park is 60 acres, which means more people are going to come to the park, more traffic, talking about more load on the road. So I think we have to keep all these things in mind that we are growing at such a significant rate. By the time this road even gets done, this road will be pretty well fulfilled in its use. So, there's all kinds of measures that we can look in place. And I think the thing for me is that all we're talking about is opening the conversation. We open the conversation, we learn, we figure out what fits, we can move turnarounds potentially where we need them so that James doesn't have to go down and turn around. We can have those discussions. And there's other safety measures that maybe the agriculture community is going to have to come on board with. You guys, when you pull off on the side of the road, you have what kind of warning devices to let people know you're pulled off the side of the road. You have lights. You have chevrons on the reflective tape all over the back of your vehicles. So maybe we have to adjust because we are in a high density area and we still want to farm. Maybe we have to do things that make people aware.
I shouldn't have to buy a 6-figure road geared tractor because I want to go farm.
Right.
I run my lights, everybody runs their lights, and everybody still gets run over.
Somebody's kid shouldn't get killed just because you don't want to be.
How am I shouldn't get killed because I need to go half a mile that way.
Sure, but I think that they're proving that slowing the speed down. If we're going to put 5 lanes all through Mills River, in my opinion is let's change the name from Mills River to Asphalt River, because that's the two things we're going to have. It's asphalt and river. You know, how about we keep culture in our community? Put a divided highway in, put some flowers, some trees, some things in there to actually make it look nice and rural and have some attractivity to our town instead of just like, I'm driving down a divided highway, get to Mills River, and I got 1 mile of undivided highway.
So let me ask some questions. So you take this gentleman sitting right back here. He lives over here in Mills River Village. Well, I'm confused here. If we conveniently fix him away, or even our park guests to get left out, are we gonna put lights at all these intersections? Because if not, I don't know, we fixing anything, are we? I mean, I'm just looking, are we gonna put lights at all these places?
To put it in perspective with the current design, Haywood Knowles has got a right out 191,
Right out.
right out. They're gonna have a left in capability.
So everybody in Haywood knows. Now I built most of that. There's a lot in there. So they're gonna come out. Where are they gonna be able to make their first U-turn going right to come back to this Publix?
At Rugby, or they can go out the back way and come out at the signal at North Rugby.
Okay. So this gentleman back here, when he comes out, he's gonna have to go down into the Food Line parking lot to go back to Hendersonville. Does that sound right? Huh?
To go to
He's-
Hendersonville.
Oh, because he is just up above there, ain't he?
Manor Farm.
That subdivision would go to Manor Farm to turn.
Okay.
It slips my mind, but the one across the street they would turn
River
really
Road.
out and they would be able to make a U-turn here at Town Center by the preliminary design, the way it was prior to being switched to a 5.
Is there a plan to put more of a bulb out there at Banner Farm?
Each one of those signalized intersections are
Mhm.
going to be sized to allow for a U-turn.
Okay,
So
and then
coming out of,
280. Go ahead.
so coming out of VWI right there, greenhouse pond, and there's a bulb out on Miss Scoot's side. There won't be a light there.
No, not by that plan.
So can you go the other way?
Now, keep in mind that this was the preliminary plan years ago before the previous
Yeah.
council.
Right.
But is there a willingness to put in lights? Because I thought we've heard before that lights are a bad thing.
Well,
Or-
at this point, we're willing to have the conversation
Okay.
and get the conversation started. Who knows where it'll end up, but I don't talk.
And I think that's the thing we're losing track of. All this is
This conversation.
are we open to having the conversation? Are we open to doing our due diligence as leaders of the community to open the door to have a conversation? We're not deciding anything. We're not changing anything. All we're saying is we're open-minded. So we can say we're open-minded or we can say we're closed-minded. That's what it comes down to.
But I don't
let-
like the idea that we have to pass a resolution to discuss this further. But you're not gonna sit here and say like, yes, we will put in a light where you want it. I mean, we're like in this,
Resolution doesn't change it.
in the spirit of safety, there is no way I could turn a tractor trailer around without a light across a 4-lane.
Let me put it in a real world experience from last weekend. Where I live on Mount Gilead Church Road, we had to take a tractor down to where the outlie is there on the map. Coming down 280 is taking your life in your hands. The center lane is a saving grace when you're on a tractor and you've got people running 60 and 70 miles an hour and people darting in between them going faster. And that's exactly how fast they're going. I follow my husband in my truck with my 4-way flashers on. My truck can take a better impact than him on the tractor. And having that center lane to get into helps. And if he's dragging equipment behind him or has the loader on the front of it, pulling off on the side of the road is not always an option. The shoulder is not always safe. and there's debris in the shoulder of the road that you can hit. And if you want to talk safety factor, leaving the turning lane in is, but what you've got to do is set a speed limit and enforce it. I was going to work, I leave at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work. The red light down there coming off Old Haywood Road, where they're working on Publix across the road, that red light's messed up and needs to be fixed. I sat there the other morning for 7 minutes waiting on it to change. I finally ran it. There was a car come through there before me, and I made sure it was clear. And I caught up with him because he was flying. He was doing 70 at 5 o'clock in the morning. Coming down 280 to come down here, it's nothing to get behind cars doing 60, 65 going past Ingles.
What day and what time in the morning was that?
For the truck doing 70,
You waiting so long there.
it was this past Monday.
So one thing that a lot of folks may not understand is when we shut down I-26, these
Mhm.
are detour routes. So we change all the timing on the lights and the main lines, get more time, and the side streets are gonna set longer because of the detour traffic from off of the interstate are using all these other alternate routes. So that,
Well, it ain't changed.
as a novel, we can look
No.
at that, but that's typically what you will see. We do that throughout the region.
It's been
25,
messed up
280,
since they
60.
graded the top off that and took the fence down and had to put the fence back up. I guess they had to work on something, but it's still messed up. So I appreciate you looking into that. But 280 is the biggest racetrack we have down through here. And it needs to be at least enforced 45. I mean, you've got people walking up and down the road. You've got one gentleman that rides a tricycle, bicycle with a big whip antenna going down through there, and you can't even see him. And if you're doing 60 coming down through there and you cut out in front of a car, you could run him over at nothing flat. So the biggest thing we need to do for safety wise is slow it down and enforce it. And this ain't the first time I've told this tale that we need to slow it down. I think a point from here to the end of 280 being a 5-lane, if you put it at 35 and enforce it, I think that's going to be a very safe highway that does not inconvenience residents. And I don't think it would hinder the fire department or the police department getting to you if you're in need of help. I think that's a critical factor that needs to be decided. If you've got the traffic slowed down, and then you can still get everything you need and we can still have a peaceful place. But if you 4-lane that and they have no way to go, they're still going to speed. So I don't know what the answer is besides put a speed limit and enforce it. I don't think inconvenience and everybody's going to help.
Let's try to keep it rolling here. Oh,
I would ask Chief,
Yeah.
when you all are responding, do you have, I mean, there is a section of 280 that is, of course, there's not the driveways, the number of driveways, but is that a concern to have that median?
So we're by no means, traffic engineers, nor are we highway patrolmen. They're much more expert in this field than we are. And we're also more mitigators after the fact is when we get called. We've always made do, with what we've got. And the way I've discussed this in any of our traffic training, which a lot of this coincides with the sheriff's office, highway patrol training. There are constant variables and inconstant variables. And when you put something in, such as a concrete barrier, there are going to be pros and cons to both. You know, as far as our response time, it's always helpful to have an open lane of travel. However, we have to adhere to traffic law as the general public does. So as far as us utilizing a center lane, have we done that? Yes, we've absolutely done that, but our lights and sirens are only a request to yield as opposed to us legally saying, get out of your way. You know, As far as traffic movement, when a crash occurs, same deal. An open lane could be a great thing to keep traffic flowing and off of us. It could be our worst nightmare because it is an open area without a barrier
Right.
to protect us if we don't have the apparatus on scene to create that shield for us as we so often try. So I don't know that answers your question completely.
It does, it helps.
It's gonna be, there are gonna be pros and cons to both as far as.
Yes, sir. Do you have a concern about, let's say, if you have to respond to a house or a development on the other side of the barrier and you have to go an extra distance, extra travel distance in order to make the U-turn to get back? Is that?
That could always be a concern, and I'll use this bridge that's
Sure.
been out, for instance. We have a mutual aid agreement with Etowah Horseshoe. They have covered part of our district for us. We've covered part of theirs due to the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. We try to mitigate those situations. We try to work through them. So could that be a concern? Yes, it could, but one must ask themselves, are these decisions we're making going to save 5 lives, but we may lose a house? That's so hard to put.
It's
size
tough.
on. So it could be a hindrance. It could give us an opportunity for a quicker response time. That's more of a question for the engineers opposed to the fire department.
Excellent, thank you.
So,
Go- Yes, sir.
ahead.
Just for the sheriff's office perspective, we're gonna allow people to know what kind of road it is. 5 lanes, split highways, but I do know split highway, we turn on cars quite a bit. You know, traffic violations coming toward us, be hard to turn on and get to them and actually do the law. You get jammed up on one side and we're non-routine and we can't get, traffic don't have anywhere to go. Just make it just more difficult. I don't know if anybody remembers Fletcher and when it first incorporated, sheriff's office contracted with them and we wrote speeding tickets like crazy up there. But that's two-edged sword. They were getting complaints left and right.
You ain't kidding.
Right, people who live in Millsboro with tickets. But I've lived in Fletcher now for probably 10 years and the respect, or not the respect, but just the fear of speeding through Fletcher.
It's
but it was
there.
there.
It's
People
still there.
knew when you go through there, you going 5 miles an hour, you're gonna get pulled over for that. Yeah. So having that said, we've got motivated patrolmen who would love to come write tickets all the time. That's what they do.
And that's another conversation for enforcement. Can I ask DOT a question? Gentlemen, the footprint that I'm looking at, now this is the footprint that was proposed previously. The footprint that has been settled upon with the 5 lane. How much narrower is the 5 lane than what we see here that was proposed earlier?
It's not, it's the same footprint,
So it is the same
with the
footprint.
exception of a little additional, at the depot house.
So what we see now is the same width of what we will see in a 4 lane situation. 5 lane situation, excuse me. So the road is not being shrunk to get rid of the 17-foot wide grass median. So the footprint is there. Now, will there be wider shoulders, or is there a possibility to have some wider shoulders, or
Yeah, that's all.
always a possibility as part of the conversation within the existing right of way? And then what I'm looking at, y'all may not see this. There are little circles with the C over an A. And no, my eyesight isn't quite that good. It's close, but I know what the circles look like. CA means controlled access. Now, we see controlled access on a roadway, and there's controlled access at the bulb out. Are there other stretches along there that's controlled access, or just at the bulb outs? And folks, what controlled access is, that means you're not getting a driveway there. You're not getting any access where it's controlled access. So there's a reason they're controlling it. And that's because it is not a place where access is safe at that point. So apologize for,
Yeah, if you look at the map, if you can zoom in, there between the two bulb outside, there's also control access. For other reasons, and in along round bridges as well. Multiple reasons, safety is the number one reason we do have control access. Typically around the bulbs, I'm sorry, that does show right away, it's hard for me to see. So down near the bridges typically and on the bulb outs, because if you have access in there and someone is making that left turn and someone comes out into that, it then completely changes the entire flow of that design. And that introduces opportunities for additional conflict points. So someone's turnaround tractor trailer per se, making his left turn, making his U-turn to go back, head the opposite direction, and someone pulls out motorcycle or a car, and all
driveway
of a
or
sudden he's
whatever.
blocking 2 lanes of traffic because he can't continue that movement, which these are designed for WB 67s for a full truck trailer to make turn to stay inside there to make that merge back. That's how these are designed for that movement.
and where these are shown now is where they were proposed back then.
Correct.
There might be a possibility to move some, or maybe even to add, or there might be a possibility to have some leftovers in some places.
Absolutely. And there's got to be a conversation first.
Right, the conversation. So, and another thing, we talk about access, and, you know, in the traffic engineer world, the DOT world, we look at different roads, different types of roads, and we have access or traffic flow. So if you think the interstate, it's traffic flow because the access is limited to interchanges. When we look at Schoolhouse Road, it's access because people have individual driveways off Schoolhouse Road. So as we're moving from Schoolhouse Road to NC 191, the type road changes. So this road would be an arterial. Is it an arterial or it's not a collector, but it's considered a major minor arterial road, or?
It's an NC route, so that'd be a major arterial.
Okay. So now on a major arterial, someone who has property now that's not developed, and they come into you with a driveway permit, what type access are you required by law to give? Because you are required by law to give access to a property. Not necessarily the access that a person wants, right? But so what is the standard access that you're required to give?
I didn't write that.
And then in a situation with a 5-lane where it's a lot of traffic, heavy traffic, is the DOT, and I'm not asking y'all to decide on something that you haven't seen yet, or, you know, just speculate, but typically you encourage a right in, right out. Possibly a leftover if it can be done safely, possibly, but not guaranteed.
We've got one under consideration right now that if they get access on NC 280, it will be a right in, right out with a leftover in with no possible left out.
And that's because of the volumes,
Volumes and speeds.
the speeds. So a road in 280 in that section is 55.
It is. And that is also the section that's in the French Broad River CTP as somewhere way down the road when funding is available as a access management project.
Okay, and this is an access management project. Well, this is a road widening project, but the concern about safety would push it towards an access management project. But that's really what you're doing. You're managing the access when you go from a 5-lane to a 4-lane.
It is a widening project with access management technology inserted.
Okay. And from Schoolhouse to Stony Mountain, it's definitely access management.
As
Because
current design, no, because it's 5 lane.
I'm sorry, from Schoolhouse to Stony Mountain, where it's going to be a 4-lane
Correct.
divided.
So it's my understanding that at some point in time, if we have no discussion, if we just say, we're done with it, move on, it could still be divided up, just like they're gonna do 280, correct? At some point, when the,
At this point, when R 2588B goes to contract, Schoolhouse to 280 will be 5 lane. Because that is the way the plan is set.
but I have been told this week, as soon as they have some wrecks and stuff, it's gonna get put back on the agenda to be divided back up again. Is there any
That is
truth to that?
possible, yes.
Okay.
But Go ahead, Tristan.
Sure. I mean, just one quick point on that is, you know, not to correct your town manager from earlier. You have a fantastic town manager. The reason for the delays, the reason for the financial situation, in terms of capital improvement projects like this, actually don't have to do with hurricane. They have to do with the fact that costs have escalated significantly. And just to point out, I bring this up because the idea of retrofitting projects or putting in quick fixes, the list is, I'll lean on DOT if I'm wrong, the list is getting longer and longer, and our general ability to get to the items on those lists is getting harder. So the idea of if a problem pops up, we can fix it, sure, but in general, those interventions are getting more costly and more difficult.
To your point, it's cheaper for you to put up a grass median or a concrete wall than it is to do something that's more eye pleasing. You're gonna pick the lowest bid, right? Well, not you, but DOT.
But
Generally speaking, you're gonna pick the low bidder.
The low bidder?
Low
The
bidder.
design, the cheaper design, probably.
Not necessarily,
Okay.
because we coordinate with you guys, we take your
Input.
input,
Yes.
yes.
You have a long day already.
I'm telling you, it's been a long week. Yeah, so, as opposed to grass is cheaper than concrete. Looks nicer, right? So, but then that comes with inherent safety issues as well, right? Because you gotta put somebody out there for lawnmower to mow. So, again, typically the town of Mills River would probably want something more aesthetically pleasing, maybe potential bush or type of tree or something to make it beautify the area. So we would work with you guys on your requests and stuff like that. But ultimately, yes, if it's up to DOT, you typically will do the cheapest way. Be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars.
Got a
If-
question?
If you did it and put grass on it, are you gonna mow it or are we gonna have to mow it?
Well, we would gladly let you mow.
No.
Realistically, right now, you would probably want to mow it because you wouldn't think we mowed it often enough.
So it wouldn't be maintained.
We're on, right now, we're on a 4 times a year mowing cycle.
Okay.
Brian? Okay.
I tried to convince
go.
my wife
No.
that that's a good cycle. She doesn't agree.
So just a question. Do we allow golf carts to drive down 4 lanes?
Depends on what type of 4 lane, as far as the 4 lane, so like, for example, I think a couple years ago, the law has changed to what I like, they're being registered side by sides. They're being registered. Technically by law, it has to be like, you can drive on a 4 lane, but it has to be 35 miles an hour or less. Right. And on a 2 lane, it could be 5 miles an hour. So,
So in the scenario of 280 or Wilson Highway, no, we did not allow. Right. So a tractor is a slow moving vehicle, just as a golf cart would be. And I know there's an ag exemption. I'm not getting into that. Yes.
a lot of exemption. When it
Yes.
comes to a tractor and it comes to agriculture, actually it has to be, that's something the community leans on. And I think a lot of common sense has to go along with that too, like the tractor is on the roadway because they're working, they're producing. A golf cart sometimes along the roadway for reasons why they should not be on the roadway per se.
Correct.
So I think, we talk about speed, and a lot of that comes down to self-responsibility as well. Commitment to the community as well, taking responsibility for their speed. Because I can tell you right now, we get a lot of complaints on these back roads. We don't necessarily get a lot of complaints on the 4 lanes and whatnot, because they're there already. We know about them. Particularly tell you right now, I have one trooper working in Henderson County right now.
Correct.
That's how short-handed we go.
I know that.
And so it's not that we don't work in this person working, but he's on I-26 working already. He can't be out to be 191 rush speed.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of this stuff takes down responsibility. What I get at is a lot of the complaints that we receive as far as speed complaints, my troopers, they're right in the first of that. major complaint themselves.
Right.
You know, and I have to,
Right.
laugh about it.
No, it
Yes,
doesn't.
you're right.
You know, so it's, you know, they don't want some outsiders doing it, but it's okay for them.
Right.
So I think honestly, again, we don't set the speed limit. A lot of people think that we do. We have nothing to do with that, which is our statistical data. DOT obviously says. But I do believe that 35-mile-an-hour zone would be sufficient.
Sure.
This community calls. And again, obviously we don't want nobody speeding, but if you set it at 35 miles an hour, and I'm not saying this right, they might go up to 50 miles an hour, 35. Instead of 45 miles an hour, they might go up to 65, 70 miles, because we got this feeling in the state and in our world that the depiction of, well, I've got 9 over, you know, we always heard 9 over 5, 10 miles. For some reason that has come about, and I know what that's come about, because North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the United States. There is no question about that. Our roadway system is a state roadway system, whereas a lot of states are a county roadway system. And obviously we are hurting in numbers tremendously more than people realize. Just as local law enforcement is. So a lot of it comes down to self-responsibility as far as that goes, but kind of getting off track now. I apologize. But
I appreciated your Andy Griffith.
this goes. There are pros and cons to both of it.
Sure.
And I by no means am I going to persuade one or the other, just from what we've seen.
My point is that a golf cart is a slow moving vehicle.
Right,
Therefore,
yeah.
that's why it's not allowed.
Yeah, say that.
And I understand why we allow tractors. And if that's our community, then maybe we need to think outside of the box. We're not going to change the shape of the 4 lane. We're not going to change how many people are traveling and how fast they're going reasonable. So, you know, if it comes on the town, you know, and, you know, probably what's the number one cause of traffic incidents are probably speeding and distractions within the car.
On distractions is probably number one, but it's probably doesn't reflect that when you look at statistical data. But it's really hard for distraction because I don't think I've ever pulled up on a red scene and said, "Hey, what happened?" I was
Right.
looking at my cell phone.
Right.
Nobody never told me.
Correct.
But most likely, there's a good chance that's what they were doing, looking at the cell.
So
But we can't, you know, we can't just guess what would happen. We got to approve. So I think some of the data, the reason why wrecks happen, the causes of them are a little skewed, just because you know, my when I was supposed to be experienced, distracted driver, I feel like it's probably one reason why wrecks happen.
So it doesn't matter if I'm in the right lane, the left lane, the center lane, the other left lane, or the right lane.
Right.
The issue is the distraction.
Distracted.
Correct. So it's, you know, traveling in which lane has no effect. It's the distraction of the driver. Correct. So, I mean, if we're an agriculture community, and I'll bring this up, if we think outside the box, they make vehicles that are designed when there's new construction for somebody to rear end into trucks that have big oak frames on the back with the barrier. You know, if town needs to contract in summer times with Wright or whoever, and us pay for that, it can't be that much money. It's a whole lot cheaper than somebody losing a life. So a farmer can call in and say, "Hey, I need an escort from here to there."
Or this is a public road, isn't it? Town Center Drive. We put our money where our mouth is. If there's a bulb out down there, then we can
Come through here,
come this way.
honey wagon and all.
Yep.
That's what comes through here. Mike
Exactly.
Corn and the honey wagon.
Yeah.
They're
I
saying,
do think maybe you're underestimating how many trips it is.
I think, no, I understand, but I think we have to come to the observation. We are designing a road for 40 years out. Okay. Because we're not designing something that's going to be used in the next even 10 years. Right. We all agree that agriculture is declining in Mills River. We know that. That's a proven fact. We don't, as much as we don't like it, I hate it just as much as
Keep
you.
pushing me out. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's a
I hate it
fact.
just as much as
It's
you
a
do.
fact.
Yeah, no, it is. And you know, I mean, look, never mind. We won't get into that. All right.
but
So
I'm gonna say,
Hold
no,
on,
I'm gonna,
hold on.
I'm gonna say, let me answer it, and then I'm gonna let you. But this kind of stuff, Brian,
Mhm.
is what the natives around here feel like is pushing us away.
I'm Nate. I was born and raised.
I
here,
know,
so
but
don't-
I'm just saying,
Right.
I'm just saying, I've had 0 calls this week,
Mhm.
except from you
Mhm.
and a phone call with you, kind of leaning toward the 4 lane. Now,
So you
I
had
had
nobody
a,
complaining against it.
huh?
How many did you have against it?
A bunch,
And that's
a
interesting.
bunch. And I can name them, but I hate to name them and them not here to defend herself, but I've got a bunch.
Right.
I'm worried about, I'm not worried about once it gets past the town limits. That's me when I travel. I've got to focus on my 88,000 people that live here.
Sure.
That's what I got to focus on in this position. I have heartburn thinking about them doing it to 280. I have heartburn. I grew up when it was 2 lane. Daddy planting pine trees so we could play ball in the yard, and then somebody wouldn't run in there and kill us playing ball in the yard. Be honest with you. Trees got dug down, 4 lane come through, the ball quit. That was over with. No more ball playing in the yard. You get killed down there. But I'm just saying, things are changing. Yes, they're changing. But let's make sure when we make these changes or think about making these changes, that our 8,000 people are on board with the discussion of it. And I don't know tonight that I could even take action on this resolution until I know that for sure. Because they was set in stone before we become council again.
Right.
The previous council said that this is the look they wanted was the 5 lane from this section. You know, and that's one bad thing about, setting things and then another council having to pick it up and go with it. But we need to make sure that we're taking care of the 8,000 people in our town. That's our job here, you know.
But I don't say how looking at safety is not taking care of 8,000 people. So is it the two things I've heard tonight? It's inconvenient. I don't care. It's inconvenient for me to put my seatbelt on. It's inconvenient for me not to be able to text when I'm driving. It's inconvenient for me not to be able to talk to myself or who. All those things are inconvenient. It's inconvenient when there's people turning left in front of me, turning right, going 30 when I want to go 50. All those are inconvenient.
I agree.
But that's not a valid reason. That is not a valid inconvenience. Is not a And so basically we come down to, I want to be able to drive a tractor on the road, which we can work with. I'm willing to work with that.
It's not that I want to, I have the right to.
You're right. You do have the right to.
Exactly. So,
And I'm allowing you by that, by helping you do it.
so well, scroll down. Scroll down on the track.
Which way? Well, he's got it.
Scroll
Which
down.
way you want to go? Towards the other way?
Schoolhouse and all.
The other way.
Lane. Right here.
Right there.
Keep going. We can see schoolhouse too.
They may have to zoom out.
There it is.
There it is.
Let's. On the plan that they, right now, there's a sidewalk on north side. Correct.
And it may only come now. I don't think it comes past,
Yeah. It's
Town
not,
Center Drive.
no, it's not what I mean.
Okay.
If you divide it, you have to have a sidewalk on both sides.
No, you don't have to.
Would you?
Well, that depends. The DOT wouldn't do it. That would be up to y'all because you would have to be the ones funding.
But the design now has it without its funding. This is a question, I guess.
It is. As of right now, there's one on this. Yes, we're on the north side, on this side. Correct.
Again, that was from the original, so I don't know exactly what those conversations were originally, so I don't know
Okay.
how that was on there.
But if we put in a grass median, would you have to put in a sidewalk on both sides?
You would know.
If we just have, but we would leave the one on this side.
Potentially, if that's what you want.
Well,
I think that
And what I want to, what we're doing with right now, what we would do
With a
later on in
discuss-
this
yeah.
conversation. Just have the conversation.
And there's lots of conversations
Right.
about a multi-use path or a sidewalk, or there was a lot of conversations, we had those other projects down there where the multi-use path project and back and forth, and it gets into who's paying for what, right? So there's rules that DOT thinks can pay for things, other things that municipalities, counties have to pay for. And that's where that discussion comes back and forth. And then you get into it as far as where it is on the plan based on our new complete streets policy, how it falls, and who has to pay for what. And I don't know all that right off without digging back in through all that.
No, I think, but if we pass our resolution tonight,
Absolutely.
all that means is that we're having that same conversation. You guys. That's all it means.
Why do we need a resolution to do that?
Why do you?
I can tell, I can say why.
Berate me for driving a tractor on the road?
No, we're not gonna berate you for that. With the MPO and the DOT, they will have to expend time to have the conversation. You're here tonight to start this, to determine the town's interest.
Did
It-
that not happen by
It happened. There has been, since then, we've seen you have more time to build data. So the MPO is looking and they see, here's a stretch of 5-lane. Rather than building it, waiting for the crash pattern, building it. It's a divided highway, eliminate the crash, or at least lower the crash pattern to start with. And I'm as an engineer, I understand the safety countermeasures because that's our bread and butter. That's why we do all of our projects. The reason I want to have the conversation to make up my mind is to know, is this going to really make a difference if we go to the 4-lane? But then how do we account for our farmers? And that's got to be part of
It's
the
more than
conversation.
farmers, guys. It's more than
It's
farmers. I mean, it's a handful
It's
of farmers,
everything.
but we've got 2 subdivisions affected here, guys. We've got River Oaks coming in on one side with no easy way. They're going to go one way to come back the other way. You've got Mills River Village, got to go right to come back left. They're not used to that. So it's a change.
It is a change, but is it proven that it would be safer for those intersections? Is it proven that turning out of Mills River Village, crossing 3 lanes of traffic to merge, is that any,
Well,
and that's the
if there's not a
question.
light there, it won't make a bit of difference in common sense. If there's a light there, possibly. But I think we owe it to our citizens to come back to us now that they know that there's a possibility for a discussion. And tell us. They're all grown adults for the most part, or looking after their own kids. Do they feel comfortable coming out on this 5-lane? Or had they possibly rather put up the idea of seeing it as a 4-lane? They damn sure didn't before. And I don't know how many people's changed when you talk about statistics in the last 4 years. I think it's the same amount of people. But people in general with common sense can make this happen. Either way. You're going to have your wrecks. You're going to have your wrecks either way. But, I mean, I hate to throw, I raced cars for many years. I don't care about myself, but I cared about everybody else. You're talking about getting on a 1937 plane this weekend, but the parts ain't here. You're not worried about yourself, but you worried about everybody else. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about safety. You see what I'm saying? If it's all about safety and statistics, you're getting a 2024 something and try to learn that. You flew the best they ever was.
If
You know
I
what I'm
was
saying?
worried about safety, I'd live in a bubble until
Well,
the
that's what I'm
bubble popped
saying.
and then
We
I'd
just gotta
die.
make sure.
So,
Don't
yeah.
think about this for yourself. Think about this decision for 8,000 people. Don't make this decision tonight based on your personal gut feeling thoughts. All I'm telling
That's
you
the
as a council
conversation.
is just to make sure
That's the conversation.
that if you want to have that conversation and bring all this discussion forward, let them pull their stuff together or not. They're busy people. Every one of these people right here are extremely busy. I'm so proud they come tonight.
Thank you so much.
But if we're going to tell them to do it, they're going to jump right on it. If we tell them not, they got plenty of stuff to go work on. So I think we just need to make a decision right now instead of fussing and arguing as to what we're gonna do with this.
I mean, obviously, I'm for opening the discussion. And the reason why is because if I'm looking out for the entire community of 8,800 people.
Yeah.
It's
Plus
safer
13,000
to
on
do
that
that,
every day.
to have the discussion.
People on it.
And I can't have, what am I gonna show? If people come and say, hey, tell me about this, tell me what the difference is. I'm gonna say, well, here's a map from 5 years ago. Well, what's it gonna look like if we don't do that? I can't tell you because we had a discussion.
If I,
It was discussed.
The landowners agreed on it, signed off on it, everybody had their maps.
Right.
And now it's brought back up that something has changed, and I think everybody is a little bit concerned that what is it that has changed?
The population, growing businesses, what hasn't changed in the river? I mean, that's
But on this portion,
yes, you're gonna have way more traffic.
we're more businesses from the, in the town.
You got a
right?
vape shop now.
if,
You got property across the street that's being sold as commercial that wasn't.
Okay,
commercial.
Y'all are- y'all-
If- if-
y'all- one of these days, you want to try to get reelected.
I'm
Let's see what mascot's right.
if I may, I think one question that we would have from staff's perspective is if council moves forward with such a resolution, what type of window do we have to review this data, to bring people together, to have this conversation, for there to be a resolution of some sort moving forward in order for it to continue to stay on track for its I think it's 2029, 2030 timeline. So are we talking 6 months of discussion, a year of discussion, a year and a half? What does that look like what does moving forward look like?
That's a great question. I mean, I would think we would have a year because we're not planning on going to construction until fiscal year 28 or 2029. So you would have time to have those discussions, pull all the data, get your public input. And then if there would be any major design changes, that could be easily be incorporated.
Such as additional tracks,
Potentially.
possible tracks. Traffic stops, bridge.
Why, resolution to continue conversations as a municipality and a road department, are we not always gonna have open communication?
Do you need this, or you need it as a resolution to, for any reason?
Not that I'm,
For discussion of your end?
I mean, I think that,
Nice clear line through it, I guess.
right, I mean, I think in other discussions we've had, because there was a resolution that said, do it this certain way. Just the thought of being open to looking at some changes. And I think that's the key point here, is that some changes, whether that's changes in where the median is installed, where median breaks occur, where traffic signals or other intersection improvements occur or don't occur. I think that's my understanding of that request. I would like to make a quick point that, like, you know, part of this conversation it goes back to the discussion around safety around the region. We're required as an MPO to adopt safety targets, where we say we're aiming for our region to have this many fatalities next year or two. What we have seen,
Less than this many.
less than this
So
many.
don't,
yes.
don't feel obligated to go out and be part of a fatality in order for us to meet that number.
That's fantastic point, yes. But what we have seen is that the fatalities in our region have been increasing. On average, the number of fatalities in our region is 25% higher than it was a decade ago. When you account for the increase in travel over that time, the rate at which we are seeing fatalities is still increasing. In 2023, well, just to put it in perspective, a decade ago, we were averaging around 45 crashes over a 5-year time frame. In 2023, our region had 70 fatalities on. Just to point out, one reason why I think safety has become a bigger point of emphasis is that we keep setting targets saying, obviously, as a region, we would like to see fewer fatalities, fewer people getting permanently disabled from crashes, and we're seeing the opposite happen.
It put one of your speed calculator things out there, and do those store data that you can look at and see what the average speed is on that thing?
All I have is a desk calculator, so that would be one of these.
Could we can do that
In further discussions, and we can discuss that if that's something we can do, we can get that.
That would be good information for everybody to get the speed that's going on both these roads. I mean, I see cars going down this road doing better, 50, 60 miles an hour. Not when it's congested, but when they get a clear shot at it, they'll make a run down through there that you hear them coming from a mile back.
So I think at this point, I'd entertain a motion. Resolution.
Just to be clear, the resolution is to ask you to consider going back and looking at this, providing facts. If that's something that they to, so we can make a decision about that stuff. Both from a safety perspective for vehicles, for all users. As part of the conversation with the town, as far as terms, possible traffic signal, etc. To have that conversation.
If we don't do the resolution, are you gonna quit talking to us?
No.
Okay,
You won't be talking to us about this.
so you won't talk to us about
Because
this
the
when-
MPO will not support anything. The MPO, vote was brought up, or it was, the MPO's resolution did not pass. That would support conversation. So the town. So the town passes the resolution, MPO, it's gonna just take place.
Yeah, that
that essentially pay for this and get access to the from our resident. Sure, it's sort of.
It could possibly, it can be done at the same time if you so will. I'll be fair about it. It can be done at the same time if you wish. Is it?
Well, as for that is
Ultimately, just so you understand, you still have the same amount of power. Basically after this, because this is just releasing for discussion. This does, you're still gonna be able to tell Tristan, after seeing all this, we're still not interested.
If I could, we got a lot going on right now, as you guys are all aware. If you are wanting to kind of look into this, it would be helpful for us to have a little additional time. Pull all this information back together, updated information, stuff like that, because like I said, we do have our hands full around the region. So some additional time would be very helpful. Our crews are still working 7 days a week, extended hours. We are glad to do it. Safety is our #1 priority. But a little extra time, if you want to wait 6 months, hey, let's do this. We might be in better shape. Her lean response.
you're saying in that time, we should do our
Yeah, and we could be pulling data and information as well.
You're our member government, so, you know, we work for you.
I know, but I'm just trying to feed that way. But you know me, guys, I don't make no motions. I just left tiebreakers if need be. So
I'll make a motion that we table this for a future date when they have information we can discuss and we have time to gather data on our side. That's what he just said. They don't want that.
I'm just saying, to get the data together, that's kind of what this is all about. Make it legal for them to move forward on it, or you don't, nobody keeps that.
We don't mind moving forward on it, but if you don't feel like you're gonna act on it, we do have other areas, other regions that want us to expend our time, effort, money on. We just want to make sure that you're one of.
The resolution to show that they're serious about conversation.
I get that. Hate to get good data to make sure we're coming forward with clear conscience, and hey, we do want to really look at this. Not looking at, no, oh, haven't, get pulled this right, and let's go back. Oh.
So let's clear up our motions. Future date. And you second it, correct? All right, any discussion?
If we table this, it's good to ask Tristan, if we can table this. Similar reference, et cetera, type data, normally.
Yeah, I mean, we've engaged with NCDOT safety unit. We can get some data. I think any specific things that we can look into that would help anyone on this council, that would be helpful to know.
Because it sounds like we need to try to figure out maybe some tractor thing.
Yeah.
Tractor accident rates.
If you know the reason for it, is it speed? Is it rear end collisions? You know, what are the cause of the wrecks?
I mean, I would say we can look at ask the safety unit if they have some comparison units. I know the district is already starting.
As far as discussion goes for me, I'm in favor of the conversation. As far as the end result of the conversation, I haven't talked about work for the agricultural situation. I'm a but because we have agricultural, I'll make sure whatever risks. Interesting conversation about this data, so that when my decision, which is only one vote, it's based on the best data we possibly have. I'll let vote by conscience. So, my opinion, try whatever that is like.
I'm not saying that I'm for a divided highway, saying I want to have at least go down the path of being open to discussion, have it potentially draw one out to see what it looks like. Then I can go to option A or option B. Right now, I could just go to option A and say, I don't know what option B is because I haven't. That's fine.
This would not be the final product, which I see here. Because if we have a conversation,
mayor of this town, we need to make sure that if any of these changes were made, if it's gonna fit inside the budget, it's already purchased. Already, this whole deal of detrimental to our citizens, they lost their home, kids, everything along this corridor. To get put out another 4 or 5 years. Yes, well, yeah, they've been paid for the land and all that, but nothing like home, you have to read. I think a lot of people, 280, they got built. They do, it happened really quick. This case is they had to find something else. They have, apartment of that. So if we're gonna buy more, I need to know that too, as mayor, I think. So I need to go to the teach, say, hey, when this blow out, they're gonna have to have enough peace. I don't know that that's the case, but I need to know. Okay. Anything else?
So we got motion to table the discussion or table resolution.
It's the table of resolution, I would say.
Table the resolution to have discussion.
As a municipality and a state entity, we have to have communication. If you don't have communication, what are you doing?
I think the resolution just fixing in stone. Yes, we're serious. Jump on this, get active. They're telling us that they got time. They'll get some numbers together. We can talk to the citizens. We'll see them at the grocery store, see them at the convenience store. They can come in and talk to us about it, whatever. Go. But I think my table is unless you got a better idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to confirm that it was my understanding also that because of the resolution before you would then essentially pass up to the MPO would then have the resolution that they brought forward that they had tabled and or some modified version of that if they so wish would then be a potential conversation point at the MPO level. So it just depends, and I don't want to speak for Tristan if I'm wrong on that, but that's essentially my understanding is that if you all passed this resolution, it would be essentially being passed along to the MPO for them to do with that as they will about their decision making.
Any more discussion? Got a first, I got a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Get those patches. Okay. Right. Thanks, guys. So, way to go. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you all.
Absolutely, anytime.
Now that brickyard's open, probably not put that sign on gas. Tow trucks. I got that one. I said, what made you come through here? You heard what? I said, man, look, you get up in the cab, his navigation. That was his line of travel.
That's what they do, yeah. Even though we send it to them, to the department, we send it to Tom,
Yeah.
all these things. They just do their own thing. We can't stop.
I get it. I mean, they didn't.
Just like out here, it doesn't matter what that black and white speed limit sign says. It says 45, they drive 75, 80 in there, on both these roads. There's nothing the department can do about that. It doesn't matter if I put 10 miles an hour.
Yes, we're at a break.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah, we're at a break.
Okay, I just wanted,
back. Ready to go again. We'll move on to C, our strategic planning update.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this presentation here is twofold. It's here, one, to bring council up to date on where we've been working on our strategic planning efforts, provide a little bit of history to those watching at home and those in the audience who may be unaware of the strategic planning efforts, and then also to ask for council's consideration around the vision, mission, and values. And I'll just before really jumping in, I'll just say, as the town manager, a strategic plan, and this strategic plan is really focused on helping to provide guidance for the town, not just for next year or the next couple of years, but for the next 5 years and more. And it's been an incredibly thoughtful process so far. I hope you see that with the update today. And I'm going to say it multiple times, but I'll just say thank you to the staff. Thank you to the advisory board, thank you members, and thank you to the council for all of your efforts so far during this, serving on different committees, different processes, and you're going to see the culmination of all of that work today. So as a reminder, the way that we put out an RFP right before the storm hit. We had great plans to kick off in October, essentially at the beginning of October. Those kind of got pushed back a little bit to December, but we partnered with our friends over at the UNC School of Government. Those are your two project facilitators there, Dr. Kim Nelson and Dr. Obed Pasha. And then as a part of their process as the town manager, I'm considered the project lead. But there are two main groups that are a part of this. One's called the data synthesis group. That's a really really wordy way of saying the group that gets together to look at all the different data, different survey results, et cetera, provides recommendations for then the larger group, which is the strategic planning committee. And that strategic planning committee is by design with 2 council members, 2 advisory board members, and then 3 out of the 4 data synthesis group members. Again, to be able to have conversations about what the data is suggesting, as well as providing input and feedback on where to make sure that everything that we're doing reflects Mills River. So quickly, why engage in strategic plan? I'm not going to read all of them here, but as I mentioned before, it's really focusing on providing clarity and direction. It's really about providing avenues for the council and for staff and for the public to understand where we're moving forward, providing that accountability, that transparency, and what I like to consider proactive governance. So instead of reacting to issues as they come, a strategic plan is that roadmap to allow us to be able to proactively plan and meet the need before it comes. I know that the members that are in the room right now have heard me say this ad nauseum, but I'll just say it again. I like to consider it, and I've used this for years, is the idea of you're in a car driving straight, you're on a mountain road, it's nice and curvy, right? A strategic plan are the guardrails along that road. So councils may change, directions may change, the community dynamics and expectations may change, but no matter what, the strategic plan at least allows for that movement and that flexibility while making sure the car doesn't fall off the side of the road. And so that's what we've been working on for the last now 6 months. So what do we want to achieve out of this? Again, moving from reactivity to proactivity, aligning budget priorities with concrete goals and objectives to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, you all are able to see, where money, where resources, where time, energy, and effort is being spent is for that, for that direction and that greater decision making that'll be going down in the next 2 to 5 years. So for the strategic planning management cycle, I'll just briefly say right now we're still in that strategic planning side. We're identifying priorities. And so right now, pretty soon after this meeting today, hopefully if council chooses to adopt what we've presented, and then moving into goals and then objectives, then we really get into that performance measurement side, and we'll talk through that. That's going to be over the next 4 to 6 months. Because of that, we kind of broke this into 2 phases, as I mentioned. Right now, before you is the vision, mission, and values side under phase 1. By the end of this fiscal year, my goal is by the second meeting in June what goals and objectives that we may have identified, or at least goals at that point, will be able to be brought before you as council as well. We have our next strategic planning committee meeting next Wednesday. And again, we're not rushing this process. This process is telling us how fast we're moving those things, and the timeline may change a little bit. But then that phase 2 is that performance measurement and decision making. How do we actually implement it, manage it? A lot of words on the screen, but as you can see here, we kicked off in December. We kicked off with a survey to a lot of the stakeholders, internal and external, came together, had our actual retreats, full retreats with council and with staff in January. And then through that process, since then, we've been tailoring the results that we've been able to see, talk through the vision, mission, and the values that you're going to be seeing here in a second. And then being able to say, okay, well, we gathered that data, the strategic planning committee felt comfortable moving forward, and then all stakeholders received a follow-up survey, gathered that data. Strategic planning committee and the data synthesis group got together again, essentially looked at those results of the survey, and then made any adjustments necessary before bringing forward now to you what we're going to be recommending. Again, this is the strategic planning framework. The areas in green are what we're talking about today. But the one thing I'll just mention, you can see values kind of goes across the board. And a goal of a strategic plan is that it does not sit on a shelf. These elements are going to be built in based off of your decision as council, are going to be built into every aspect of the work that we do. Right. And that's why, for instance, the vision and the mission drives the work that we do. The values are how we're going to do it and the expectations that we have of ourselves and that the community should expect from us when interacting with us to make sure whenever we're trying to meet the mission and the vision. So let's talk briefly about the community, about the vision itself. Again, I'm not going to read all of them, but essentially it says, what does the future look like? What do we want it to look like? What do we think it's going to look like? What should it look like? All right. And then how are we going to be preparing ourselves for it? So we asked the question in 10 years from now, and in various ways we asked 10 years from now, what do we expect, want, etc. Through all the surveys and then the back and forth over the last few meetings, the final draft that went before all stakeholders was the town of Mills River is dedicated to preserving, sustaining, and cultivating our community. Now, after having those conversations and looking at the results, and I'll jump into, that's not the recommendation, I say that's the previous to the survey. We'll get to that in a second. The survey comments themselves, talk about it being a great description. It provides values of the town. They like the cultivation idea, et cetera, short and to the point, which a vision statement should be in many respects. And then one of the things I point out, these are the results on the side. There was one strongly dislike out of that. And actually, so in the work that I do, I always want to go back and say, is this a strongly dislike or is this a potential misclick? And we're talking with the facilitators, we determined that all the comments were positive with this dislike. So we believe it means actually a strongly like, or at least a minimum of like. So for this point, approximately 30 out of 33 liked it with 0 dislikes. So that information came back to the strategic plan, to the DSG and the strategic planning committee, looked at it a little bit more detail and said, this is the recommended for council consideration. Vision, yes, sir. It's not, it's actually a tree. Yes, no, no, this is a picture to try to highlight the main terms which are in the recommended vision statement, which is the town of Mills River preserves, sustains, and cultivates. And during that conversation, it was really looking at the foundation, the soil, the preservation, the sustaining is the trunk of the tree, and then cultivation was actually the leaves and the foliage that came from it. And actually, that came organically from the strategic planning committee and the discussion that came up. I thought it was a rather nice visual. Now, the recommended vision statement also comes with it recommended definition of key terms, because without defining what those key terms are, it could be a vision for any community, right? And so preservation is the recommended for preservation is protecting the past while keeping, maintaining, and taking care of what we have. Sustain is to strengthen and support our present through thoughtful planning. And then cultivate is to invest in the future through nurturing thoughtful growth. And so before you, for council, I'm going to pause here for the recommended vision statement first to see if you have any questions of me or questions from, as you saw, Councilmember Kimball and Councilmember Good both serve on the committee. If you have any questions regarding this recommendation. All right. For the vision, for the mission statement, we're going to follow a similar pattern here. I always love that first question. Why do we exist? Very existential, right? Why do we exist? What do we do and why do we do it? And what is the purpose of us as an organization, of the town of Mills River as an organization? So what we presented this draft in the survey. It said the mission of the town of Mills River government is to foster community well-being. The reason why government is marked out in red is because, again, for the survey, it had the word government in there to try to differentiate between the two. The recommendation that you'll see in a second as well is that government's not necessary because town of Mills River in this context is considered the organization as the mission. So going over to the survey results for mission, there were again a strong like and strongly like and strongly like contingency. 26 out of the approximately 34 had a positive review of it, 5 were neutral, 2 were that disliked it, and again that strongly disliked we believe is actually a strongly like based off of the corresponding comments. But you can see some of the elements here from the open-ended questions that they think that the mission was strong as long as it's coupled with the definitions. Again, you'll see in a minute. That's accurate, it's descriptive, it's purposeful, and that they could see the they like the mission and agree with it. And there's a little comment about whether or not the little plane, right, and whether or not it could be mission of any local government. But again, maybe that's the point, and that's a direct quote from that survey respondent. So recommended for council consideration is the following: that the mission of the town of Mills River is to foster community well-being. And just like with the vision statement, without defining what those key terms are, it could be anywhere. And fostering is really to encourage, advance, strengthen, and cultivate. Again, terms that we see a little bit within the vision statement as well. Community is focused on all who work, live, visit, or recreate in Mills River. And last but certainly not least is defining well-being as being safe, comfortable, happy, and healthy. So again, I'll pause here to see if you have any thoughts or questions regarding the recommended mission statement. Any questions?
Glad you got safe. I mean, our best to try to make that safe. Community safe. Okay.
All right. And then last but certainly not least are those core organizational values. Again, what's going to be how we're going to be handling it. Right. And so for the value statement, these are just, again, some of the hard work that the strategic planning committee has worked on. This is just actually from one. So the values I submitted to the stakeholder group were these 3: respect, service, and service being defined as dedication to community well-being in a professional and efficient manner. And then integrity is upholding honesty, transparency, fiscal responsibility, and ethical accountability in serving the community. So when we looked at that, again, quite a few, about 31 that we believe liked or strongly liked it, again, based off that one strongly disliked that we believe is just an errant click. No dislikes, and I believe this is 3 neutrals. Again, supportive and representative. I want to stress that last comment here as well. It says These three core values represent how I would like to be treated by my town government. So after conversation with the strategic planning committee, this is what is, these were the final three that were before you. There were no changes from my notes on any of those because, again, the overwhelming positive response. There was a lot of conversation again on these definitions. And so I would pause here if there are any questions about these three. So the one thing that I'll stress here before we go into the potential recommendation is that this strategic plan, this vision, this mission, and these value statements, and then the goals and objectives that come later on, they are not owned by any individual. This as a council, by adopting this, you all are setting that standard for us. And so I want to make sure that before any passage or discussion of passage, that you all feel comfortable that you all are owning this plan, because this plan will guide our decision making as staff and the work that we're going to be doing moving forward, as well as what community expectations are. So that being said, right now we're in May. If it's approved tonight, the next goal that we have going into next week is we're actually having conversations. We've been having conversations the last couple months about goals, but we're not quite there yet to bring them to council. And we're also started into the objective conversation. So we're going to continue working through that in June, depending on where that is at the end of June. I'm sorry, next week. Next week is the May meeting. We have a May meeting, the June meeting, and then depending on where that is, my goal is to potentially bring those items to you, but again, may shift. And then once that's there, then it's really opening into that operationalizing the strategic plan, that performance management side. There's action items that are necessary to fulfill the objectives and the goals that you as council have adopted for us to move forward. And so with that, that's the last slide that I have here within my slide deck. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about what we've done so far, where we're at, or where we're planning on going.
Anybody got any questions? Pretty much understand. Yep. Appreciate everybody that stepped in to help fulfill these. I entertain a motion if nobody has any questions.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the vision, mission, and values for the town of Mills River as presented.
Tanner made a motion.
I'll second.
Jeff second. Any more discussion on it? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay.
Thank you, council.
All right, we'll move on to our potential facility fee waiver requests.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. You get to listen to me talk a little bit more. Sorry. If you haven't heard me talk enough tonight. On Thursday, May 15th, we received a fee waiver request from the Western North Carolina chapter of the Military Officers Association of America. It's regarding a shelter rental for a planned event being held at Mills River Park on May 30th, 2025. The town, the staff, we have a fee waiver policy that we are able to implement. So staff got together to look at to see whether or not this request was eligible by the current fee waiver policy, which was adopted in September 8th, 2022. And so the policy includes actions that we may grant. And in the opinion of staff, this does not meet the requirements as outlined for us to be able to waive that policy, because it's our understanding that the organization is charging a fee for catering for the event, right, being offered at the event. And our policy states that it has to be open to anyone, it has to be free of charge, etc. It also states that, as you can see in the backup here on the staff report, that the town's picnic shelter rules state that the shelter may not be used for an activity which will result in monetary gain for an individual or a private group without express permission of the Mills River Town Council. And that's not to say that there is a monetary gain, but because there is an offsetting of costs, it's in the staff's opinion that there is this item needs to come before council for consideration. It is not something we could approve ourselves. But you all have the ability to.
Can I ask a question? How much is the fee?
I do not have the fee in front of me.
How many hours?
Four.
I've asked,
Or I'll
I've asked,
pay it. If I pay the fee, we don't need the resolution.
Well, if I may, just for the clarification, Nicole, you said 2 hours.
I've asked
4 hours.
4 hours.
Okay, yeah.
4 hours.
I've asked Steve Watkins to be present in case we had any questions that staff couldn't answer. He's, heading this organization up at the time.
I need to talk to you, but I'll pay the fee.
Well,
I'll
I've
just
got
say
a couple of
$80.
questions.
Yeah,
Okay. I looked y'all up and you're a nonprofit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And, Are
Steve, if you would, come up to the mic, just so we can get it for the record.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Watkins, the president of Western North Carolina MOA chapter. Glad to be here.
so,
Thank you for entertaining us.
thank you for coming.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're a nonprofit
Yes, ma'am.
and you do support, retired vets from around here and stuff?
The Military Officers Association, we do support retired veterans.
Mm.
We are an organization of former, current, and retired military officers, uniformed officers, to include Public Health Service and NOAA, in addition to the 6 military uniformed forces.
Are y'all charging just enough to cover the catering?
We're actually charging less than that. So our caterer is charging us $30,
Mhm.
and we're picking up the balance because we want people, we want our members to attend, and we're trying to get additional members to come, join the organization and see what we do. So we're charging them $20 for the event.
If we are concerned this is gonna set a precedent, then I'll pay the $80 and we don't have to vote on it. I'm glad to support y'all. I've been a member. I need to renew. It's a good organization. And, we've got to think about all organizations when we make a policy change like this. And I'm happy to support you. I'll do $80.
I appreciate
And
that.
if that takes it off the table.
I agree with you for not setting precedent.
Okay.
They're 4.
So really, I mean, I think, to support you as a government, we absolutely do support you, but
Understand that.
anyone else that comes in, we have to be real careful about that.
Agree
So,
completely, and that's why I
I'll-
put it forward. I will tell you that we are excited. We just decided or just received a grant for a new Mills River resident, the Veteran Healing Farm. So we're going to present the Veteran
Excellent.
Healing Farm, $3,250 grant very shortly. Was going to try and do it at the picnic, but I think it'll end up being August. So we're excited for the Healing Farm and what they do, and like to support them.
Well, thank you for choosing to
Yeah.
come to Mills River.
Thank you for
have
coming.
your
That's right.
activities, and
love
we
your
will.
art. You've done so much. It's great.
It's only gonna get bigger.
And better.
So with this discussion, we need no motion. Y'all are gonna take care of it. Y'all get in your pockets before you leave. Make sure whoever's supposed to get it gets it.
We can all pitch in.
Steve, I don't know if Kai has reached out to you from Senator Budd's office, but not yet. Well, he's promised me again today he was going to.
That's fine.
And then I've got a phone call into Tommy Lauder. I'm just waiting for
Yes.
him to call me back.
Okay.
Trying to make sure all grants are addressed as you need them to be moving forward, okay?
Sounds perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate you coming, spending
Thank you,
all
Tom.
evening with
Oh,
us.
I enjoy it.
Okay, good.
Got a great program.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to upset the apple cart.
Okay, so we got that. We're through D. Any other business? Other business? Hearing any? No? Okay, no, go ahead. I'm
I'll
not
go ahead. So last Friday I played golf with, Fletcher Town Park golf tournament. So 2 of the members on my team, one of them was the, Pearson County representative for the Southwest Safety Program. But the other one was the county's representative, the Governor's Highway Safety Program. And they both said that if we want them to come over here and run tickets, that he won't have any time to do it. they want council's blessing on that because they guaranteed that bring up. So
I've been down that road before, and I forewarned everybody when we took the traffic down in front of Ingles through there from down to 45. The people was requesting it. I said, we can do it. We can, as a council, request it from DOT to have it done. But keep in mind, we are the ones traveling that road the most. So as soon as you get popped, don't come back in here and say they got me. So I really need, yeah, you really need to think about that. They've got a job to do. There's only so many of them to do it.
I'm
So
just throwing that out.
I understand.
I'm just saying that somebody wants.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Can we have stickers that say we're Mills River residents? Don't stop us.
No.
No,
Negative.
nobody's above the law.
Yeah, I believe
I'm
that
not
you
saying
can
we're
have
not-
the stickers. I'm sure it's not
It's
going
not
to
gonna
help.
work. Ask my wife. I'm a boring driver. Ask my wife. Who's watching now.
Okay. Any other
Hopefully, if
business?
they put the signs up that flash the sign you're going, it'll slow them down. But it's everybody going through there. Amazon trucks going through there. I mean, you get behind them, they're weaving in and out of traffic because they're in a rush.
Oh,
And it needs to be slowed down for safety.
And, I work the city of Asheville as a traffic engineer, and 80% of my workload was traffic calming and how to get people to slow down. And I'm for it. I think that's a good thing. I just, like you said, let's be careful. Additionally, and if this is other business, so we keep, so the conversation tonight, our trooper brought up an interesting point, lowering the speed limit. And maybe that is our way to handle the 5-lane. It's okay for us to support the 5-lane. Will the lower speed limit offset that, and that create a safer environment for our farmers, for James when he's out on the tractor? Knowing people are going to be driving 50, that's better than knowing they're going to be driving 70 on that. And
It's going to be safer for pedestrians.
and then as part of that, is there a way that we need to pursue with our contract with the sheriff's department, additional deputies along our major corridors here to speed? In some states, Wascom, Texas has brand new patrol cars because they write a lot of tickets, and you don't speed through Wascom, Texas. It's on the border of Louisiana. That doesn't work here because when one of our law enforcement officers writes a ticket, the money goes to the school system, which is great. We love the school system, but it's a cost. It costs money to enforce the law. The more we enforce, the more it costs, and we don't get a return other than some minor amount for administrative. So that's if we want to do that, the only way to make it effective is to enforce it, which then is more resources. But
I was going to ask a question between you and Matt. If they write tickets in Mills River, does the town of Mills River profit from that in any way?
no, not one of them. County schools do, but not necessarily just Mills River schools. And that includes parking tickets and handicap tickets. So $150 or $250 handicap ticket, most of that goes to the school system. So, park in the handicap spot if you want to support the schools a little more. And that's, like I say, I support the schools, but it costs money to enforce those laws that we don't necessarily get a return from, other than peace of mind, the safer environment. So there's that.
Any other business?
No. But somebody, would they be interested in something like all over beaker, okay, town initiated.
Typically, the governor's always safety. I think that's what they're not looking for long-term things. They're looking for like
spots.
They're the ones who do like saturation fills, they'll do like the, your traffics or your, road blocks. Yeah. So they do campaigns, because they do those campaigns, they get points each possible.
And there are options. I mean, you mentioned the speed signs that flash and tell you your speed. Those are very effective for a couple weeks. And after that, they become part of the furniture.
They don't work on me. I try to see what my high school.
They have them up by Glen Marlow all the time because traffic is so fast through there.
Matt, did you have something?
So just two points for consideration, and this may be a little bit under for future agenda items. But Mike Letchek and I have had conversations around the traffic schedule and bringing that forward for conversation with council in August. And it gives us a little bit of time, July, just a little bit too soon, just because we had that one meeting. But starting that conversation in August, which at one part of that conversation is around speed limits and et cetera. So that may be a time if there are conversations around that, not just for the areas that we're talking about now, but actually getting a more holistic view of the town of Mills River. We can work towards getting that prepared for you all. The other thing I was going to mention is that I've been having conversations, preliminary conversations with well, I started with the county, as I mentioned to you all, with around the sheriff's office contract and better understanding the terms around that as we went through the budgetary process. And then actually we're going to continue the conversation with the sheriff's office specifically, and I'll bring these pieces to them, and then also what their capabilities are. So as an example, whether or not, and I'm sure Sergeant Heatherly back there can tell me I'm wrong on this, is that like some of those speed things may have license plate readers on the back or LPR. So there's actually potentially the ability to actually have dual purposes there for assisting the community for tracking purposes. At least where I came from, almost all of them had those types of options. So I'm going to be working on educating myself as well during this process on what could be potential opportunities for the town of Mills River to consider when we're talking with our sheriff office partners.
If I can jump in here, because I can't restrain myself being a traffic engineer, former DOT. In a municipality such as Mills River, our statutory speed limit is 35. In the county, unincorporated, it's 55. If you don't see a speed limit sign, you can drive 55. Here, it's 35. Areas where the speed limit is other than 35, such as Schoolhouse Road, NC 280, if the speed limit is, now, I did some research on this because when the town was incorporated, most of those speed limits were already in place. We do not need what's called a concurring ordinance. However, if we choose to do those, it cleans things up. Without a concurring ordinance, if, let's say, the DOT comes in and says, we're going to put a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit out here on 191, the town has to pass an ordinance concurring with that. Otherwise, it's not enforceable. And if the town chooses to pass the speed limit and the DOT doesn't, it's not enforceable. So that's why I think, thank you so much. Since I've been on the planning board, I've looked at that schedule of traffic ordinances and just, so I really appreciate y'all looking into that. Thanks.
While we're on other business, I'm not in favor of anything to raise that sheriff's contract up. So when you go to talking to him, in my opinion, if it can be done within what the budget they've proposed, I'm good with it. If not, they're gonna have to wait till I move on to vote yes on that.
Understood.
I don't know how much staff they've got to even make it happen,
Yeah, and what I'm talking about is very preliminary,
I
just generally having
understand.
a
Yeah, I understand.
conversation.
Okay. Okay, make a motion to adjourn. Got one. How about second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I guess we're able to jump right into our, make a motion to go into our budget of business meeting.
Business meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Da, 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 da.
Discussion. I thought was adjourning to go home. I got excited.
No. They're just adjourned to get restarted.
All right, it's 9 o'clock. Take half the time, say every other word.
Well, we only have a few small items before you hear council. And the reason why that they are under the business meeting and not under the regular meeting is because based off the conversation today, we're going to build that into the recommended budget. So the first item before you is our fee schedule review. And I'm going to ask for both Mike Malachek and Nicole Sweat to come up here, if you will, and sit at the table. And so essentially what you see before you, I'll start with the easier of the two for this year. The Parks and Rec fee schedule, the recommendation is for it to remain unchanged going into FY 2026. The fee schedule for planning and zoning, Mike Malachek has done a lot of work, better understanding where our current fees are, seeing where there are opportunities for making sure that they are now more in line with the staff time that's necessary to do those reviews. There's some other areas where we've incorporated a new fee, but then really the main thing is it's also making sure that it's equitable relative to our neighboring communities. So not only was he looking through the lens, and Mike, I don't want to speak for you, I know you can speak for yourself on this, but I just want to say that he very much focused on making sure that these were in line and consistent with our neighboring communities as well. So there's not a crazy outlier that's affecting us relative to others. And so for that, I'm gonna pause here. You can see briefly the staff report. These are the individual listed items that Mike is recommending for, and staff overall is recommending for updates in FY 26. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Do you have any updates? And then Nicole, if you have anything to add, I would like to hear from you as well.
I don't. I mean, the summary of all the changes are in the staff report, so I'm happy to answer questions on those. And I've also got my spreadsheet. We looked at Fletcher, Hendersonville, Black Mountain, and Henderson County for benchmarking.
So when you looked at them, Mike, did you look at them for, to make sure we wasn't a lot higher than those, or what did you look at those for?
Yeah, just to make sure we're not charging an exorbitant amount.
Okay.
I mean, I'll pick one out is the residential zoning permit has always been held at 25, and I was always told historically that's been to lessen the cost on the individual citizen building a house. But the subdivision developers are also paying that. All our other municipalities, including the county, charge $50 for that. So I'm proposing 40. So we're actually still below our peers, but we're actually state law says you should set the fee to compensate just for the staff time. Okay. And so that was the goal. That's just one example.
Yeah, that would be my only concern with any of this is just making sure that we're just recouping and I know some of these, you probably don't even get it all back.
The only ones I'll say where we would be higher than our peers are going to be the more intensive processes. So the annexation is a good one because again, we don't have utilities. The town has less to gain with an annexation than a lot of other municipalities that provide a full set of services. So some of those, like the annexation, went up quite a bit. The vested rights permit, I've never seen a request for it, but knowing it requires a public hearing, we set it at the same level as a rezoning, just knowing the staff and council and other time.
Gotcha.
So if there are higher costs, they're going to be most likely borne by a developer or by someone with a very specific detailed request.
Any other questions?
I just wonder if they're enough. It's not really covering your time. I know, I understand what you're trying to do and I appreciate that. There's just some that $500 for some things. And if we were a business, if we were an engineering firm paying for time, you look at what the permittee comes in with the full team, that doesn't cover the time they spend out in the hallway talking about whether they won or lost, because the amount of time, amount of money it costs. So
what's an example of that? Just curious out of these.
When I'm on a team and go to a public hearing, then we've got an attorney there. No attorney will ever tell me what they charge until I need an attorney. Then the engineering team, you're talking a couple $100 an hour for each. person on the engineering team, and then blah, blah, blah. So compared to your time for several hours for $500 with salary and multipliers, that's not very many hours of your time covered by $500. And, you know, one thing that I used to complain about when I worked at the state, somebody opening a fruit stand, getting a driveway permit, someone opening a super Walmart paid the same $100. And it was never intended to cover our costs. But anyway, that's, soapbox, I'll be quiet because it's late.
I'll say the one thing I tried to touch on with that is the watershed permits. So you can see we're passing on most of the engineering review costs, and because I've discovered that developers, engineers are having difficulty designing systems that meet our requirements and then are demanding more of our engineers' time. So we're actually paying more for an engineer to help out a private engineer for a developer. And I'm not okay with that. So going forward, we'll still have the permit cost to cover staff time, but we'll also basically, the town's contracted engineer will basically directly bill the applicant past one review. You know, we can cover one review, but if it's taking you 3 times plus an hour and a half on the phone with our engineer to get it right, that's going to be on the developer going forward.
You're gonna tell them that.
Yes, and it'll be in the fee schedule, and then that would be explained if they come in for that permit.
And the typical fee that a resident is going to pay is less than a developer coming in from outside.
For watershed.
For anything. Looking at this, pretty much what our residents are going to pay is going to be less than what a developer or a more extensive things generally is not the resident.
Just a question. Plus cost. So if somebody did a resigning request, we potentially, obviously $500 would have covers your time, but obviously we have hire attorney for the planning, the president. So we potentially do like a $500 where it's plus whatever our attorney needs on that.
I've not seen that done. It's something we can look at. I've tried, my goal has been every year here was try to eat at this a little bit to make it better and get us up to standard.
Great stuff.
So I mean, you know, I'm happy to look into.
Your pay, did that go up?
That I believe I added in either last year or the year before, because we were trying to incentivize people to pay the fines when we have to do that. The failure to secure a permit's a little easier because again, we do have, sometimes people just don't know there's a process, but sometimes we actually have people who know there's a process and just do the work. And so $50 is.
And I should know this, what's the vehicle restoration permit for?
So that is basically a permit tool to help with code enforcement. So if you have a junk vehicle on your property, let's say you have 2, and one of them is a vehicle you're restoring. Well, you should have a right to restore a vehicle, but we don't want that to, you know, linger for years. So basically you get this permit, you get 6 months to work on your vehicle, show us every 6 months you're making progress, and it's not just a junk car sitting there, and you get to keep extending your permit till you repair or restore your vehicle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent work. Thank you.
And Nicole, yours is staying the same, correct? Just like it's been.
Changes for this year.
Okay. Any questions for Nicole?
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I guess we'll move on to our capital improvement program discussion.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the last item before you tonight is talking through the capital improvement program, which is a part of the budget book that will be coming for you in June. So the capital improvement program, as a reminder, is really focused on looking at planning for those large scale potential capital improvement needs over the next 5 years. It's in many ways it's a budget tool. It's a strategic planning tool, etc. And so what we've done before you here today is to talk through what my recommendations are for your consideration going from FY 26 to FY 31. Really, FY 26 is already built within the capital plan, right? Like when we're looking at the general fund, what you're really passing as a part of the budget is FY 26. The CIP is telling you with the knowledge that these other priorities are coming in these out years, and we need to work to prepare ourselves to meet those priorities. And so a couple of things of note for you here. First, on the first page that you have is actually the summary page of each section. I'm going to actually go into each individual section here just to orient you a little bit. First and foremost, to set the stage, I left a lot of the items within the individual ones based off of previous year capital improvement program. It's not to say that there's a recommendation in the future. We're going to be, as an example, building a skate park, right? And like based off of the timeline, it was there. It's something that I want to make sure we consider, continue to have on the list, but there's no consideration of that within this plan. That's an example, right? So I just want to orient yourself to where that is. And also, I like to consider my recommendation this year as a step towards next year's fully fledged capital improvement program with a 5-year financial forecast. So from 27 to 31, this is not set in stone. This is us with our best guess based off of prioritization currently. And then through the budgetary process and through that 5-year financial forecasting we're going to work on, it's going to better identify what that looks like. So that's high level, 30,000 foot view. So let's get into the details a little bit. So as you can see, in capital project for public facilities, building maintenance at $120,000. Again, we've already talked through that. And then talking through, for instance, in FY 27, some audio and visual updates outside of what we already have planned in FY 26, which is below that capital plan. Capital improvement programs are $5,000 or more, so that's why you may not see some items on there. And then the town hall expansion, relocation, acquisition, we have that $500,000 that's currently allocated towards that. So that's why that is currently sitting in FY 28. That is to have the conversation, as we've talked about during the visioning exercise. What's the future of this building look like? What's the future of town hall expansion overall? That's why that money is sitting there. So as you can see, just to orient you a little bit, the next section talks about whether or not we have that as revenue, grant, debt service, or if it's to be determined. Right now, all those 3 items are focused on fund balance appropriation. Moving on, unless there's a question. The transportation section here, again, the two elements, you can see we're really starting this conversation in FY 28. The Mills River Valley Trail Engineering, that's currently slated on the CIP for FY 28, and that's because with the conversation of the widening project out here in 191, you had to do the engineering work first. And then also, we've talked through about restriping out front on Town Center Drive, the actual conversation of starting to look at resurfacing in FY 28 as well. That's about the timeline in which it needs to be done as well. And then further work going into FY 30, again, depending on what phase 1 looks like out here and what's necessary for that type of surfacing work on potential roads, we've slated money again further down the road. And then future years, you can see that $6 million mark, that's really holding on to that phase 1 construction of Mills River Valley Trail construction. And that's updated based off the last numbers that we have. We know that number is going to change. It's in a future year. And so, as you can see here underneath, again, a portion of what we suspect in FY 28 will be coming through a grant program. Most of it, though, is coming from fund balance appropriation for those elements, but the $6 million is to be determined, mostly because it's a $6 million check currently. So we're going to have to do our due diligence to make sure we best understand how to work through that. One of the biggest areas, as you all can imagine, is the Parks and Recreation section. Mills River Park specifically. Really the elements here that you'll see in FY 26, the new maintenance facility, the 150,000, that's what's been recommended in the capital project this year to get that project off the ground. And then $2.5 million, which is set aside for FY 27. Now, let me orient you a little bit to the why is $2.5 million. Off of preliminary conversations with WGLA and others, we looked at trying to understand what the largest footprint that would make sense on that property, what it would look like, and what the potential cost would be. The highest estimate that I received was $2.5 million. So for the CIP under its current form, that's why you see $2.5 million there. The point of the $150,000 is to understand what our needs are of that property. It may not be a 9,000 square foot maintenance facility. It may look different, feel different, etc. So it's my philosophy to start at the high number until you get the actual number and then work from there. So that's why you see 2.5 and 27.
So man, let me stop you there a minute.
Yes, sir.
So we're basically, are we thinking we're gonna spend $150,000 on somebody to tell us what we need over there?
No, sir.
Okay,
So I suspect, based off of the quotes that I've seen, is approximately $50,000. So that the extra $100,000 is based off of that plan. You all being able to then react to that plan, us put a plan together, and then we have $100,000 already in that capital project to start that next phase of that work, whatever that next phase is. You still have $500,000 sitting in the recommended budget for in fund balance in case you needed more than that extra money. But that 150 is really, we don't know to what extent that plan needs to be. So that 150 is just locked for that project. Does that make sense?
yeah, but who is this person or group that's gonna get 50,000? Who would that group look like?
So, I mean, so we would have to go out through the procurement process
Okay.
in order to identify the engineers and the firms that would be capable of meeting the scope and scale for what we're looking at. So again, we would have to have some firm or a group of people together to help guide us on what is actually feasible over there from an infrastructure perspective, parking lot perspective, architectural perspective, et cetera, and then bring that for council to actually consider before we move forward. So, but like I said, in my opinion, knowing that the estimated cost I've received is about 50,000 or more, we know that whatever we're building out there is going to cost quite a substantial amount of money, regardless of what that decision is. I didn't want to lock up all of those funds, and I wouldn't recommend locking up all those funds into a capital project, but until we're ready to build.
Right.
But that's why that's only $150,000 is sitting there, because we know we're going to exceed that 150 at some point. We're going to have to move money in based off of the decision. Does that make sense? I just didn't want to. I get nervous about locking up funds in a capital project if we know it's going to take at least 12 months before ground is being broken in case of another natural disaster or what have you.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, I'm in the wrong business if it takes $50,000 to tell what we need, what we can put on 3.5 acres or 3 acres, 2 point something acres. I get it. But you talking about taxpayer heartburn, that's taxpayer heartburn.
Again, this is the highest, and again, that 50,000 was on the highest end.
Okay.
Again, and for budgeting purposes, knowing that we're going to be the capital project is named such that we are, once we go from design into build, all those funds will be able to move into those phases whenever they're needed.
And just for an idea, for an engineering firm, first of all, we can't do competitive bid because it's engineering, so it's a different set of rules. So we put it out, we get the most qualified.
Yeah. That's a lot. That is not true. That picnic shelter, for example.
Now, is that a design or is that a build?
It's exactly what you just described.
To design it is one thing. The engineering services sealed by an engineer, that's one thing. Whether or not they're the most qualified, it's what we have on the proposal that comes in.
Okay.
Because that's what it's kind of like
So
the Board of
what they're bidding
Adjustments.
against. Okay, that's your.
What they're doing is they're coming in saying, we've done these projects. This is our staff capability. We have this much staff time. These are our resumes. You look through it, you have a scoring system and you choose who's the most qualified.
Okay.
Now, as far as putting, putting up the vertical construction, that is competitive bid, usually.
Okay.
But, $50,000 is about 230 staff hours.
Okay.
Because you figure in an engineering firm, it's all based on hours and the
Okay.
time it takes. So 200 hours, it sounds like a lot of time until you have to do it. A traffic study is about 110 to 120 hours for a small traffic study. That's why the cost is what it
The
is.
only reason I brought that up at all is that's just one. As you start across through here, there's gonna be a bunch of $50,000 over through there. That, it's gonna take taxpayer money to build it out
And design.
beside the build.
So the overview design, the preliminary overview gets us an idea of what can actually go in. Because they're going to look at the terrain, they're going to look at the drainage, the infrastructure and all that. It all takes time, and
I got you.
that's before anyone takes a shovel to it.
Yeah.
And again, and my perspective again on this is that the ballpark estimates that I've received so far, my goal is to make sure that we're over that a little bit, just to ensure that we're not surprised by
Okay.
by when we actually get into the weeds. But to your point, yes, no, the $150,000 is not all for that
Okay.
phase by any means. It's just wanting to make sure that we have funds there, that the community understands that we're working towards that.
Okay.
I hope your 2.5 million for a 9,000 square foot barn at $200 or $280 square foot is not a little bit over, but
Way high.
So what I've been told as well is, now obviously it's not just the facility itself, but if we're going to be holding offices in there, what that looks like if it's 2-story, and then also the parking lot, the infrastructure for connecting to the water systems and sewer systems, et cetera.
280 high.
I'm just I passed it along. I was told it was the high end. I agree that it's the high end. I agree that it should not, it. Once we get the actual numbers back, once we get that process going, I think we'll be surprised. I hope. I agree. And so then, like I said, those are the big elements there, and then also that $100,000 for upfitting the current maintenance facility also in 27. Again, this is based off of the visioning conversation that we had about the two priorities of these two elements, getting them started. And that is not to say that there's not going to be movement of priorities once we understand what the scope and scale of these projects are. And then, when you move on to the next part of the notes is, again, that infrastructure master plan, again, that 150, we do not believe it's going to cost $150,000. Again, it's that $35,000 to $50,000 high end mark is what we've received. But again, we do believe that then there's funds available for those next steps that we could start on if council so chooses to prioritize that at that time. Then what you see in the phase 1 expansion for FY27 is $1 million. And so you may be saying, well, the recommended budget only asks for $500,000 only asked for $500,000 in the assigned fund balance for that potential. Why is this saying $1 million in FY27? And the rationale for that is really partly around the grant cycle. So the grant cycle, as a reminder, we have to work on activating that site as soon as possible, as soon as we're able to. And so the grant, such as the part of grant, I believe it has a May cycle, May 2026, if we're looking at a 2027 project. So there's a scale for grading on those, and having funds set aside in FY26 in the reserve gets us certain points. But then also having identified in the CIP that you all as a council have prioritized that, or gets a certain amount of points. And so $1 million essentially says, in the part of grant example, if there's a half match, $500,000 would be coming from the part of grant. And so then the $500,000 that's set aside within the capital, currently within the assigned fund balance, would be coupling with the $500,000 from the grant. So that's why showing $1 million, because When we looked at it, we were concerned about putting 500,000 in there, and then that would only show that we were eligible for $250,000 of a potential grant. Now, again, that depends on what the project looks like, what the scale of that project looks like, what's ready to build. That's going to come during the phase one infrastructure conversation. And so that's why you see local fund balance appropriated $1 million in FY 27, but $500,000 in grant funding is expected. I'll tell you, my perspective on this is that once we go through our due diligence phases in both of these projects, that we will then have the ability to come back to council and have the conversation about it. How do we truly prioritize the need for a maintenance facility and then the need to begin building this out, and then how do we fund it? As an example, and we've had conversations at the staff level about this, is to say, there are some elements that may be considered as phase one, but you can only do that if you have the space and capacity in order to have the equipment necessary to maintain it. So we're going to have to balance this as we go through that first phase in next year. All right. So I suspect this is going to be, again, continuing to move. But as of right now, council has given us the vision to focus on getting these two things off the ground, and then we'll let that process work its way through. You can then see for phase two and phase three expansion, again, FY 29, FY 31, and I apologize, the expansion park property, FY is incorrect, but the overarching at the top, 26 through 31, there's $500,000 set aside for phase two and FY 29, phase three and 31, and that's merely as placeholders as we better understand what those phase approaches look like for future decisions. Last but certainly not least, we have the community development side. That's the Unified Development Ordinance in FY 26, and then the land preservation funds at the 500,000 FY 26. There's currently nothing in those out. I know that I went through that relatively quickly, but that I'm happy to answer any other questions you all may have.
What you got? Anybody? No. Good.
Is it my understanding then from council that both the fee schedule and the capital improvement program as presented are or at least you all are open to that as being part of the recommended budget? Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you all. Appreciate that.
Any potential future agenda items? Anybody got anything? No? If you do, let Matt know and we'll get them on there. Need to go into, somebody needs to make a motion to put us in a closed session. Oh, well, we got, I'm sorry. Somebody make a motion to close the current business meeting.
So make a motion to close the current business meeting.
Second. Jeff, any discussion while we're closing it? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, go ahead.
Make a motion to go in closed session pursuant to 143 through 18.11A6.
Okay. Who wants to second that, closed session?
I'll second it.
So,